Hello, everyone. Give me 1 second. Just setting this stuff up. Hit the send button. Make my announcements. Look, I was just sitting here waiting for my debate tonight at 5, and I was like, you know what? I got the wiggles. Okay, got the wiggles in me. I could just sit here and wiggle, or I could go live and talk to you guys a little bit before Destiny shows up in about half an hour now. So yeah, Knight Galahad, you might be the only one so far. Welcome, even if it's just one. I appreciate you. Okay, I'm gonna need the support today. I will be debating Destiny in about 30 minutes regarding his take on the Alito flag situation. So, can you guys not see me? Is this working? Is this saying hello? Hello? Is this thing on? I think this thing's on. I'm not sure. Thank you. Good luck. I will need it. I will need it. Give me a second. But yeah, I'm hoping tonight goes well. I think my argument's pretty sound, but we'll find out. But welcome, everyone. Welcome. Oh man, did you guys like the debate last night? Who watched the debate between Harris and Trump? Raise your hands, ladies and gentlemen. Raise your hands. Let me see your hands. Okay. Did you guys like that? Did you guys have fun? I thought it was content gold. Okay, regardless of whether you think Trump won or Harris won, there were so many clippable moments. There were so many good statements. They're eating our dogs, right? It was all I could ever hope for when it comes to content. Okay. All I could ever hope for when it comes to content. It was beautiful. I loved it. It was amazing. And I don't know. It was just fun. It was fun to watch. It was fun to kind of get into. Yeah, yesterday was just really good content overall. I had Dylan Burns on. I had Loner Box on, Fabian Liberty, Non-Smoker. They had their debate prior, right? I thought that went really well. It was really fun. It was really interesting. I thought we got into the weeds from some interesting things about Tenet and how that relates to streaming world and to what extent do people bear responsibility when they're deceived, right? Overall, just a great conversation. Okay, I really enjoyed it. I'm very proud of the actual conversation, actually. And again, we watched the debate together, and that was fun. But today I'm trying to rewire my brain to get back into actual debate mode. I don't usually debate, right? I mostly moderate, right? I'll jump in here and there, but usually I'm the one that is making sure I'm retard wrangling, for lack of a better term. Okay, I'm making sure people are able to be heard. I'm making sure people have a voice and that the views are expressed and things like that. But today, ladies and gentlemen, I will be actually entering the arena because Destiny recently made a take that I strenuously, not just a little bit, okay, strenuously disagree with. I think that it's not just wrong, but it's wrong in such a way that it is almost unbelievable, okay? I watched him and his conversation with Pisco, Dan, Lycan, Josiah, etc., and the arguments that he put forward not up to his standards. Let's say that. So I reached out to him and I asked if he wouldn't mind debating this with me today. And he agreed. And so in about 30 minutes, a little less than that, he will be coming on to make his case. So his take, I'm hesitant to tell you. I don't like to put people's words in people's mouths, right? As I understand it, his take was that Alito, Justice Alito, should recuse himself due to the actions of his wife. The actions in question were flying two flags. One in 2020-2021 era, it was an upside down flag, and the other in 2023 at a vacation home they owned, where she flew an appeal to heaven flag, which is basically a pine tree and things like that. Those flags have some connection to the Stop the Steal movement. And the argument is that because his wife flew these flags and he didn't immediately demand that they be taken down, or didn't immediately take them down, that he has violated the impartiality, right? Like, so he has signaled to people that he cannot be impartial in cases regarding Stop the Steal and the January 6th issues. I think that's bullshit. I think that's bullshit. We all have family members, ladies and gentlemen, that do things that we do not agree with, that we strenuously object to. We don't divorce them. We don't leave them. We don't disown them, right? Alito should have told that lady to get back in the kitchen. I mean, maybe, like, but that's just in general, right? Determinata says, so the question will be, under what conditions is the likelihood of you being biased by a close family member too great to risk and thus must force a recusal? Yeah, I think that there are cases, like if the court case will directly impact your family member, like say your brother owned a company, okay? Your brother owned a company and a court case involving your brother's company came before you. I think in that case, you should recuse yourselves, because it would be hard for a reasonable person to think that you would not, or you could be impartial in that case, right? Your impartiality would be in so much doubt that you couldn't, I think, function, right? But that's because the court ruling would directly impact the welfare of your family member, right? In this case, as far as I know, Alito's wife didn't break into the Capitol on January 6th, right? As far as I know, she wasn't even there. His ruling, whether he rules for or against it, isn't going to materially impact his wife at all. Yeah. It just wouldn't. And if your standard is that, well, I can make an argument that it's an appearance of evil, right? That the appearance of impartiality is just too great in this case. And so while he might not be impartial, right, or he might not be biased, there is an appearance of bias. I reject that, because if that is our standard, then almost like an argument can be made for a lot of cases that we would find spurious. The judge in the New York trial against Trump donated money to Democrats. A very strong case can be made that in his case, he has more of a bias against Trump because he did something directly. But no, it would be silly to use that as a way to force the guy to recuse himself, because again, you can have a difference of a political opinion with someone and still be unbiased and rule in an unbiased and impartial manner. You simply can't. Like, we understand that that's the case. $5 from Zephyrhash to say, at a baseline, we must assume Supreme Court judges are capable of separating their freedom of speech from their civic duty unless a ruling causes us to question it. Yeah, the default assumption is that they can be unbiased. Yes, that is and should be the default assumption here. Because again, if the assumption is, right, or if the standard is an appearance of evil, right, an appearance of possible impartiality, then no woman is ever allowed to rule on a Roe v. Wade or abortion decision. How could they possibly be impartial when it directly impacts them? No judge with a daughter who, should be able to, because their family member will be directly impacted by this. How could they possibly be impartial? You see how these arguments can be made? How it gets to silly season really, really quickly when these things? And to be clear, all the arguments I'm making here about women can't rule on anything regarding Roe v. Wade, black people can't rule on anything regarding racial justice issues, homosexual couple, like if there was a gay judge and he was married, he should recuse himself because he's gay, and how could he be impartial when it comes to gay marriage being up for debate on the Supreme Court? You see how this gets to really silly season real quick when that's your standard? And to be clear, all these arguments are stronger by an order of magnitude than someone's wife flew a flag, and therefore it means you cannot be impartial when it comes to a case. No, it's not, Theophilus. Theophilus, that is not. I'll read you the standard. So here, Court Code of Conduct states as follows: a justice is presumed impartial and has an obligation to sit unless disqualified. That's part one. Part two, a justice should disqualify himself or herself in a proceeding in which the justice's impartiality might reasonably be questioned. That is, where an unbiased and reasonable person who is aware of all the relevant circumstances would doubt that the justice could fairly discharge his or her duties. That is a much different standard than I can make an argument that maybe they'll be biased. You understand the difference here. There's a substantive difference here between I don't think you're capable of being unbiased versus you might be unbiased. Or you might be biased, right? What is the debate about? It's about the flag Alito situation. Again, unless your argument is that Trump, the lawyer for the Trump trial, should recuse himself, right? Because he donated money to Democrats, which a reasonable person could assume that means he's biased against Trump and unable to rule fairly. Unless your argument is that a homosexual justice should sit out and recuse himself from anything that touches gay equality or anything like that, because a reasonable person might assume that they might have a bias there and be incapable of being impartial. Unless that's your argument, which if you want to make that, by all means, right? Unless that's your argument, then it is unreasonable to expect Alito to recuse himself because his wife did a thing. His wife said something. His wife flew a flag. His wife didn't even say anything. His wife flew a flag. Which he asked her to take down, to be clear. He asked her to take it down. So not only did he not do anything, he asked her to take it down, right? And you're going to want to impeach him for that? Nah, get out of here. That's fucking stupid. That's retarded. I don't think that you are a reasonable person if that's your belief. Again, what is the evidence that Alito flew this flag himself? You have to have something. Sure. A judge must expect to be subject to the constant public scrutiny and accept freely and willingly restrictions that might be viewed as burdensome by the ordinary citizen. Does not mean he needs to accept any and all burdens that are placed upon him, right? We don't expect them, for example, not to vote. We don't expect them to be siloed away from any and all media, even though the media might bias them. Like, you understand that while, yes, there might be a higher standard, that standard does not include certain ostentatious, right? Or not ostentatious, like unreasonable asks. And I feel that asking, right, or requiring your family members, your direct family members, to give up their First Amendment rights is just an unreasonable standard. It's an unreasonable standard. No, it isn't. Portland is burning. Why? Why is that reasonable? Again, when we know that he asked her to take it down. That is much more evidence that he did not want it to happen. He disapproved of it, and he asked to take it down. What is your evidence that he actually approved of it? Do you have any testimony, any words that him or his wife said? Anything? Anything? No. What happened is you made up a story in your head. You said, well, this story is likely to happen, I think, because of my preconceived notions and biases, right? You made it up, and then you're asking for action to be taken on a story you just fucking made up. You made it up. His wife is recorded as saying yes. And when was this recording taken? After the kerfuffle, right? Because remember, the reporting on this did not happen. There was no reporting on this until May of 2024, years after these flags were flown. No one gave a shit. In fact, the Washington Post had this story back in 2021, chose not to run it because they didn't think it was a big deal, because they didn't think it was anything. The only reason we're talking about this is because the New York Times years later decided to put this up, right? Put this story up. So again, Alito asked her to take it down when there was no media pressure. None. No outside forces were doing this, right? He decided this. They probably had an argument about it. Yes, it was after the first flag, which, again, he said they argued about, right? They had a disagreement about it. So they probably had a disagreement, had a talking to, and she was like, okay, now I get it. Fair enough. Yes, meaning he didn't want it flown, Portland is burning. Meaning, why would he want it flown if he knew it would be a problem for him? Why? There's no upside here. There's no upside or benefit to him flying this flag. So did she forget learning? Well, that house was bought by her money. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, right? Does Alito have the ability to tell his wife to do what to do with her house? I mean, maybe, right? And the appeal to heaven flag, did you know what that was before anyone explained it to you? I didn't. It was a pine tree flag. I had to Google what that meant. You didn't know? No one really knew. Hey, people. Welcome into the stream. He'll be here hopefully soon. And we will get this started. But yeah, this idea that we demand that justices, not only can they not do this, but if their spouse does this or their family member does this, that we're going to hold them to account is just an unreasonable standard. I understand that if he had flown the flags himself, that if he had made statements regarding this in public himself, the case might be made. Fair enough, right? Fair enough. But we're talking about a situation, right, where a person's wife did a thing, and we are trying to use these this pattern, like we're trying to connect dots that don't really connect, right? That might connect. And we have plenty of examples of couples that are politically at odds, that are married for decades. Do you guys know who James Carville is? He worked on Bill Clinton's campaign, right? And he's been a Democratic operative for years and years and years. He met his wife, who was working for George H.W. Bush's campaign, a Republican operative. They've been married for decades. And one's a Republican operative, one's a Democratic operative. They work at odds professionally, but they're happily, as far as I know, happily married couple. Like this idea that your wife is your property and has to be in lockstep with you, or they are going against you, is shit you just made up. It's not true. It's not true. $5 from Zephyr Hash. Hey, Whick, I openly support Kamala this election cycle. Does it mean I will have to recuse myself when I become a Supreme Court judge in 2058? I mean, according to the standard, yes. The fact that you can do nothing, you can say nothing, but you can be punished for what your significant other, again, not even a crime. She didn't do anything that was illegal. She flew a flag. And in fact, she says it didn't have anything to do with the Stop the Steal stuff. She claims it was because she was saying F you to her neighbor, right? They were having a dispute. I don't know if that's true or not, right? But look, I've known some Karens in my day, okay? Fucking with your neighbors is a time-honored tradition. So, I mean, fair. It could be true. But here's the deal. So Gregory Griffin, they're calling not only for his recusal, but they're saying if he doesn't recuse himself, he should be impeached. Why are we having this conversation? Why is it important? I'm having it because I'm having it because I saw Destiny's conversation on that, and I thought he was dumb and wrong, and I called him out, and I asked him to come on, and that's why we're having the conversation, because I want to. That's why I want to. And he said, okay. That's why we're having the conversation. I think it might be interesting for you guys as well. So, how does a upside down flag mean anything as a fuck you to a neighbor, though? You understand that the upside down flag thing has a history that's far and beyond that of Stop the Steal, right? Far and beyond that of Stop the Steal. For years and years and years, it existed as a thing. Back in 1903, 1907, right? All these things. Like, it has a rich history that goes well and beyond that of Stop the Steal. I don't know the details of the altercation, right? But I can imagine several scenarios in which case it would be a fuck you to the neighbor, right? What is Destiny's league rank nowadays? Is he still hard stuck? Look, I don't know about that league stuff. But again, this idea that he needs to recuse himself, I just don't buy it. I already had a debate on this with Econoboy and Josiah, right? Which is the only reason Destiny started talking about, like, look, you want a conspiracy theory? Here's a much more likely conspiracy theory, right? That Josiah was malding and still malding because I beat his ass in this debate a few weeks ago, and he brought it up to Destiny, crying to Destiny, like, Destiny, am I not right here, right? And that started that whole conversation. Look, Destiny's being mind poisoned by Josiah. Josiah is like Wormtongue. You guys seen Lord of the Rings? Wormtongue, the guy whispering in his ear, like, don't trust them, my liege. They're out to get you, my liege. His wife flew a flag, my liege. That must mean he's in league with the enemy. You cannot trust them. That's Josiah. I like Josiah. Josiah is fun. He's my buddy. Right? He's my buddy. I knew and talked with Josiah and was hanging around Josiah before he blew up, right? He'd been on my show a lot before he blew up, right? But no, the reasonable position is not he should recuse himself. That is not reasonable. It is unreasonable. And anyone who has that position, I doubt their ability to be reasonable. Frankly. I think your mind's poisoned. I think there's lead in the water or something, and you've been drinking it. Yes, Josiah is behind all of this. His fault. Yes, what's more reasonable to you? That he and his wife concocted a plan in order to fly this flag as an ode to the libs, right? And he decided, well, it might get me in trouble, so I'm going to have you take it down. And then I'm going to blame you if anything goes wrong. Or is it he walked outside one day, he saw the flag, he saw the news, he said, fucking again. And he went and he had an argument with his wife that lasted a few days, and eventually she agreed to take it down. That is far more reasonable than a secret plot to own the libs, right? In fact, if you believe that it's far more likely that it was a secret plot to own the libs, I think that there's lead in the water, buddy, where you're at. There's lead in the water. You've been drinking it. You've been drinking the Kool-Aid. Your brain's gone to mush. You are incapable of reasonable and rational thought with regards to this topic. Frankly. It's just so out there. So far out there. Look, this is almost as crazy. No, this is just as crazy as the people who are like, they're eating our dogs, right? When Trump screamed that, they're eating our dogs. They're coming in and eating all our puppies. Our kitties and our puppies are getting eaten by immigrants. There's more evidence for that than there is that this was a secret plot, okay? And that's crazy. Crazy. Gregory Griffin says, more likely he didn't really care, but then political pressure mounted to the point that he had to take it down. What political pressure? There was no reporting on this at all until May of 2024. There was no pressure. The Washington Post said they had the story, but they didn't publish it because they didn't think it was anything worth publishing. There was no political pressure here. No one was saying anything about this until after the New York Times story dropped in May of 2024. And then Durbin published his letter, right? Trying to pounce on it. And then Alito addressed it. Like 2021, no one said shit. 2022, no one said shit. 2023, no one said shit. The only time people said shit was when they thought they could get a W, right? Dan, Portland is burning. Dan, did you not watch Destiny's stream on this? That's literally what Dan said. That's literally what Dan said. I don't think he used the word secret plot, but that's what it was that he was describing. Destiny agreed with him. They may have walked it back at some point, right? But in the stream I watched, they did not. Sure, and if Destiny comes on and says, nah, I was just fucking around, this might be a short conversation. If Destiny comes on and is like, nah, I was just shooting the shit, I was trolling, then this might be a short conversation. Sure. We might be having a very short conversation if this was all a troll. Pottering Politics, $20. Why do you lay these troubles on an already troubled mind? Thank you for the $20, Worm Tongue. I appreciate it, buddy. You know I love you, right? Even though I think you're very wrong on this. But yeah, no, I think that I think Destiny's been mind poisoned for real on the courts and on these issues. So. Destiny does troll a lot throughout the streams. Yeah, I mean, like I said, this might be a short conversation, but again, in my DMs with him, I did lay out my take, and he did want to debate it, so I'm assuming he disagrees. If we'll see. He should be here any minute. Si se puede. Is that how you say your name? I'm not sure. Says, dude, Josiah's in everyone's chat. Yeah, he gets around. He's a good guy. Whick, can you even steelman the position without using ridiculous statements about conspiracies? I don't think you can. Yes, the steelman of the position is that because there is an appearance of impropriety where someone might think that might be bias because his wife and him are a union, they're a marriage, and they obviously share some values. They must if they're married. Then it is reasonable to expect that him and his wife share this position, and because she expressed it, it is reasonable for the public to doubt the veracity of his ability to be biased, or unbiased, I should say, in this. That's the argument. Steelman. Am I wrong? Like, do you accept that, Steelman? Portland. Do you accept the Steelman? Well, I'm gonna assume you do, right? Because Destiny's gonna be here. He says he's wrapping it up and coming, so yeah, it might be a few minutes late, but that's fine. So, like, yes, I can Steelman. I just think I don't think that follows. I think that's an erroneous manner of thinking. I think if that's the way you think, then you would have to argue that the judge in the Trump's New York case should also recuse himself, which I don't think he should. You would also have to argue that any justice who is a woman cannot rule, or has a daughter, cannot rule in anything regarding abortion or women's health or women's rights, which I don't think they should have to recuse themselves here, right? Like, these are the things that, if that's your standard, this also must be. Like Kana Boy says, I hold myself in contempt. I hold you in contempt, baby. Portland is Burning says, you're missing the most important part, that using their shared residence to broadcast the views imply shared endorsement consent. Yeah, again, you just made that up. That's not true. Like, it does not imply that. Why would it? Do you think I approve of all, like, okay. Men, my dear boys, we often have what is called a man cave when we live and cohabitate with women, right? Because there's a place that we want to decorate for ourselves. Because women, right, they love to decorate in a certain way. And we may not approve of that, but because we love them, we give them leave to do so, even though we share that domicile, right? And for the sake of the marriage, for the sake of love, they may give us one room for ourselves. It's a pretty common concept. You may think it's sexist or weird or whatever, but it's pretty common. Okay. Yeah. So again, you may not approve of how she decorates. You may not approve of the plants she has everywhere. You may not approve of their lacy curtains. You may think they're unmanly. But because, again, you make compromises. You don't just rip out their curtains and stuff. Bro, don't do this comparison, Whick. If you're married and I go to your house where your wife put up a Nazi flag and you leave it there, I'm going to assume you co-sign that. Sure, but this isn't a Nazi flag. This is an upside-down American flag and an appeal to heaven flag. These are not the same thing, right? And while, yes, I would be much more aggressive in asking my significant other to take down a Nazi flag, I would tolerate a Trump flag. I wouldn't like it, but I would tolerate it. I'd be like, okay, as long as you don't fuck with me, I won't fuck with you, right? You don't fuck with my shit, I won't fuck with your shit. Alito's wife took a knee during the national anthem. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true, buddy. But yeah, like, look, we got to remember, none of this is something Alito did. This isn't something he said. This isn't a shirt he wore. This isn't a flag he flew. It's something his wife did. And I don't think it's appropriate to hold someone accountable for the actions of their wife. My wife runs a red light. Should I have to go to trial? No, my wife's responsible for that. What was Pisco's take on this? Pisco agrees with me. Pisco is on my side because he knows, at least in this instance, what he's talking about. Si se puedo says, okay, but to be fair, we're just trusting Alito when he says his wife did it. Sure. But if you're going to doubt that, I need you to produce evidence that he's lying. Like, yes, we are trusting him, but sans evidence showing that he should not be trusted in this case, I don't know what to do with that other than there's these basic assumptions just to have a normal, like, interactions in life. You just have to assume. You do have to assume that people are being at least somewhat truthful unless you have evidence to suggest that they're not. So if you have that evidence, please present it. It'd be very useful to me because I don't want to look stupid here, and it'd be nice if I had that in my pocket. Knight Galahad says, damn, Pisco agreed. Either a broken clock is still right or I'm wrong. Maybe. I really don't understand why this is a big deal. It was a flag at his private property. Who cares? It's not like he adorned it in his chambers. This is just petty cope. I mean, people care, obviously, but they didn't care until the New York Times made it a story back in May, right? And again, before this, the Washington Post had this story for 3 years. They had the story for 3 years. They just didn't think it was worth running with. All right. Per Thompson says an upside down U.S. flag is decidedly worse than the Nazi flag. No shot. No shot that you believe that. I don't believe you. If you see two homes, one is hoisting an upside down American flag. One is hoisting a Nazi flag. No shot you think that the upside down American flag is worse than the Nazi flag. No. No way. Read the rest. No one is a real Nazi these days. Yes, they are. But there are real people, and lots of them who support the Stop the Steal movement. That's true. But the idea that there's not real Nazis today is just false. It's wrong. There are. There's not a lot of them. There's not a ton. But they definitely exist. That wasn't a spider. That was a fly, gang. Don't worry. Don't worry. It wasn't a spider. I saw it. I'm on it, gang. Not a spider. It's a fly. Yep. Crisis averted. Yeah. Again, I just don't, like, I don't know if I could take you seriously if you think that the Nazi flag is better than an upside down American flag. I don't know. But are there Nazis more dangerous to the Republic than Stop the Stealers? I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. I mean, they are, but they're less likely to have an effect. Does that make sense? So, yes, they are more dangerous, but their ability to actually have an effect is less. He said he's wrapping up. We're going to give him some grace here. Okay. We're going to give him some grace. He's kind enough to have agreed to come on my show. Little itty boy streamer, okay? Little small itty bitty viewers. Small little itty bitties, okay? So we're going to give him a little grace here, okay? We can do that. If Nazis didn't exist today, we would never have invented the term neo-Nazi. So you think they flew the flag upside down to represent the same thing that MTG did when she posts the upside down flag on Twitter? I can't read their minds, okay? So I don't know for certain why they flew why she not they, she flew an upside down flag. I think it's fine to infer that it might have been in support of Stop the Steal, right? It very well might have. I think that's a fine inference to make. But you have to infer, right? And you also have to connect the dot that he also secretly supported it, even though his actions and his words show that he did not, right? So he said he didn't, and then he made her take it down. Those two things happened, right? He said he did not, and he also said, I told her to take it down. And she fought me for a couple days. Several days. I forget the exact words, right? So maybe, but even if it was in support of Stop the Steal, it's still not enough to make me call for Alito's recusal when Alito didn't fly that flag. His actions were that he left the flag out for 3 days. Yeah, he was arguing with his wife, probably. It takes time to have these discussions. And let's be clear, Alito's relationship with his wife is probably more important to him than his relationship with Twitter people and podcasters. And the podcasters and Twitter people's opinions of him. It's probably just true. He's probably going to defer to keeping his marriage rather than some guy on Twitter being mad that it took him a couple more days and they would have liked to take their flag down. If Alito did fly the flag, this changes the situation dramatically. Then he would be ostensibly making the statement, right, that violates the codes of ethics. But there's just no evidence that he flew the flag. And there's evidence that he didn't. So. Yeah, I would need to see evidence that he himself flew that flag on purpose. Intentionally. What's the evidence he didn't? Well, his statement, his wife talking about how she loves to fly flags. Like, we have recordings of her talking about all the flags that she wants to fly, right? Yeah. So unless you have evidence that he did do it, we're going to defer to that evidence. You might not think that's strong evidence, but unless you have evidence to the contrary, that's the evidence we got. No, the evidence that he flew the flag was on his property is not, that's not evidence. I mean, no, right? Like, especially if you cohabitate, especially if someone else is naming on the deed, that's not evidence. That's not enough. Old Scotty says, not buying it. Mutual respect between a husband and wife would lead to one side relenting in respect to the other's position. Sure, and that's what happened. One side relented and eventually took it down. Just took a couple days. 3, I think. Max Rama says, what's the difference between her flying it with his consent versus him flying it? Because him flying it is something that he did, an expression that he has, whereas, and to be clear, there's no evidence that he gave consent, and in fact, there's evidence in his statement saying he did not consent to it, right? That it was non-consensual, that he did not want it to happen, and he asked her to take it down. So keep that in mind. But even if he did consent to this, there would be a difference in scale here. You would have a stronger argument, and I could be persuaded in that case. But yeah, there's a difference between my wife wants to do something and I let her do it versus I did it myself. Hold on. Okay, Destiny's asking where to go. I'll give him the link. Give me a second. Invite people. Boo, 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 boo. Okay, gang, we're gonna start this shit show. You guys ready? Hello, you're live.
Hi, what's up, babe? Wait, can I grab a drink real quick?
Yeah, go. Do your thing, man.
Yeah, grab it.
Hello, Destiny's audience. I hope you're doing good. Hope you're having a fun day. I'll try to be easy and gentle on Destiny today. Unfortunately, Pisco isn't here to bail him out this time. Pisco actually agrees with me on this, but I mean, we'll see how it goes. Take it like I had my drink prepared. That's all I gotta say. Okay. Thank you for the 5 gifted memberships, Honkler. Really appreciate that. Don't be gentle. You know what? I like Destiny in general. I just think this one he's wrong on. And
What am I wrong on?
Yes,
I think
you're wrong on this
one.
one. I know, it's crazy. That's why we're debating. But since you're back, if you can get your camera up, we can start this.
Maybe I don't want to use my camera today.
Why not?
Okay, you got me. You bullied me into it.
Yeah, so I watched your conversation with Dan, Pisco, Lycan, and Josiah on the Alito thing. Do you still stand by your statement that you think he should have recused himself?
On stuff relating to the election, yeah,
the
probably.
January 6th, stop the steal, all that, right?
Probably, yeah.
If he doesn't, do you still stand by the statement that you said he should be impeached if he refuses?
Yeah, I think if you're supposed to recuse yourself and you don't, then you should probably be gone, right? Yeah.
Well, give me 1 second. Yeah, no, I understand that. I just think that impeachment is like a step above, right? Like, I think there could be questions about whether you should or shouldn't recuse himself, and if the area is gray, but impeachment is like almost a step above. But I guess let's start by just telling me why you think Alito should recuse himself for what happened. What do you think happened?
I feel like so if there is a flag that's hung up outside of your house for some period of time that seems to not only declare like a political position, but like a support for a particular like policy position that you might rule on, and then people see it and then it's publicized in the media and then you've got to make big rulings on it, I feel like that undermines the legitimacy of the court quite a bit. I feel like that's probably not a good thing to do. Yeah.
So if you had a situation where you were on the Supreme Court and you saw this flag flying at your domicile, it'd probably be appropriate for you to ask the person that flew the flag to take it down. Yes.
Yeah, or recently like a stranger like came up and flew it, or what do you mean?
No, just whoever flew the flag, right? Whether it be someone you lived with or
I would probably take it down myself. I would probably run there screeching and take it down, yeah.
Run there screeching and take it down. I just think that again, like you've read his letter, and Alito's claim that it wasn't him that flew the flag, that his wife instead flew that flag, and when he found out that his wife was flying that flag, he insisted that she take it down. They argued about it for a few days, and eventually she relented. I think that's enough, right, to make it a bit unreasonable to call for his recusal. No, I won't even use a bit. I think it's ludicrous to call for his recusal when it's not something he did, right? It's not a statement he made. And when he saw that statement being made by his wife, he asked her to stop doing that. And I think that to imply that because it took a little longer than you would have liked for him to take it down, that it requires or he should be expected to recuse himself, I just don't buy that.
Do you think a reasonable person could see you flying a flag? Well, here's the first question. If a reasonable person, when I say reasonable, I don't mean they have their correct, just like an ordinary person that's of sound mind and judgment, saw a flag flying outside of your house that said, I support policy A, and then policy A was on the docket for the Supreme Court to rule on, do you think a reasonable person could see that and think, I don't know if I trust your writing on this? I feel like you might be biased.
Sure. I can understand why that might be the case, but the standard for recusal isn't. I think you might be biased. That's not the standard.
I think it is actually.
Well, we can read it if you'd like. So
It's the
again,
appearance of if there's an appearance of impartiality by a reasonable person.
no, not quite. So in Alito's letter, I'm going to just quote from the letter here in the disqualification section. I'll just read it for us so we can go through. So B, disqualification section 1 says a justice is presumed impartial and his obligation to sit unless disqualified. Section 2, a justice should disqualify himself or herself in a proceeding in which the justice's impartiality might reasonably be questioned, that is, where an unbiased and reasonable person who is aware of all relevant circumstances would doubt that the justice could fairly discharge his or her duties. And there's a substantive difference there between it might be that you have a bias here versus I don't think you're capable of being unbiased. And that's the difference in the standards. Because, and let me explain myself.
Well, I don't think that standard isn't they're not capable of being biased. Is that I think a reasonable person who's aware of all the circumstances, I think, could question your impartiality.
No,
I don't think that's like a
would doubt that you could fairly discharge your duties. No, not just question your impartiality, but doubt that you are capable of being impartial. There's a substantive difference to these things.
What's the difference?
No, I'm saying there's a substantive difference to these things.
Yeah, I'm asking what the difference
Sure.
is. Wait, also, can you link me this so I can read the exact words again?
Give me a second. Yeah. Hold on. I'm taking it from the Alito letter, right? He quoted it for me. If he's misquoting it, then I'm gonna get egg on my face, but I don't think he is. So the difference here is I can make an argument that let's take the justice in the Trump case in New York. Because he donated to Democratic operatives and for Democratic causes and to Democratic candidates, I can reasonably make an argument that he might not be impartial when it comes to ruling on the Trump case, that he might have some biases that make it hard for him to be impartial on these cases.
Wait, who are we talking about right now?
The judge, I forget his name, in the Trump case on New York, where he's going through that, right? Again, he's made donations to Democratic causes and things like that. I don't think he needs to step down because he is still, again, capable of being impartial.
Well, I don't know what it's a whole different forum. I don't know what the standards are for that. Are we talking about are you talking about like a federal court case in like in a New York district? Or are you talking about like the state, like the New York courts, the state courts, or?
I don't know if it's federal or state. Are you saying that these are substantively different to you, that the standards are different here?
Probably.
I don't know if they are, honestly.
I guess I'm just trying to be clear. Because like, for instance, like the Supreme Court isn't going to be making like rulings on like on criminal cases or something like that, right? So
fair.
But so I guess just coming back to the text of this, okay? So a justice should disqualify himself or herself in a proceeding in which the justice's impartiality might reasonably be questioned, that is, where an unbiased and reasonable person who's aware of all relevant circumstances would doubt that the justice could fairly discharge his or her duties. So a justice should disqualify themselves if a person might question their impartiality, right? They're not sure if they could fairly discharge his or her duties, or they would doubt that you could fairly discharge his or her duties because the impartiality might be reasonably questioned, right?
So
I think that if you're...
go
ahead.
Let me give you an example of where that would be the case, right? So if, for example, the court case in question would directly impact a family member. So say Alito's wife had broken in to the Capitol, right, on January 6th. Yes, a reasonable person would look at that and say, I don't know if you can actually be impartial in this case, so I think you should probably sit this one out, buddy, because the ruling would directly materially impact the welfare of your family member, right? That's pretty clear-cut, I think that's a pretty easy example of a case where, yes, I think any reasonable person would say, yeah, sure, that's unbiased. But in this case specifically, we're looking, again, it's anyone who's aware of all relevant circumstances. And the relevant circumstances include the fact that Alito didn't make this statement. Alito didn't fly this flag. Alito asked the flag to be taken down, meaning that he didn't consent to it, right? And I think that I just don't think you can be reasonable and still say that that person cannot be unbiased in this.
Okay. I mean, I disagree. I don't know.
Sure. Okay. Fair. I just look. You and Dan triggered the fuck out of me. Okay, because Dan basically made up a story. Okay, made up a story about how they were in cahoots. That him, Alito, and his wife wanted to fuck over the liberals. Okay,
I think that's still true. Yeah, but I'm not even
why
arguing.
do you think that's true though?
Because the idea that you're a Supreme Court justice and you're allowing your wife to fly politically charged flags outside of your house in one of the most tumultuous periods in U.S. history, and you're unaware of it and you're taking days to take it down, in that case, I don't know, there's another clause for retardation, but like if you're that stupid, you probably shouldn't be ruling on these cases as well.
Okay, first of all, he didn't allow it to happen. In fact, he was fighting with his wife, at least from his statements, and I tend to believe him on this, right? Unless you have evidence that he's lying here. That he is wanting it taken down. He's arguing for it to be taken down. I don't like this. Let's remember that no reporting was being done on this. The only reporting that happened on this was in 2024 when the New York Times released the story in May. And in fact, the Washington Post had this story, right? They chose not to run it for 3 years. They said that they were sitting on this story for 3 years. They didn't think it was a big deal, and they never read it. So there was no outside pressure at that point in time. There was no political to do about it. No one knew about it even or cared. And in that instance, in that context, he's still calling for her to take it down.
I mean, it's his house. Like it's part of your house.
It is
like,
his house, but
you don't
also
have to
her
fight
house.
anybody to take it down. You just take it down.
Sure, but you can understand how it would cause maybe marital stress if you just took down something that your wife wanted up.
You don't understand how she can cause stress to the integrity of the Supreme Court and to her husband's job by flying an incredibly partisan flag.
Which is why she eventually probably took it down. And in fact, we have recordings of her afterwards, after this incident, saying, okay, I'm not going to fly any more weird flags. I'm going to defer to my husband in this from now on. Again, for the evidence we have, it just sounds like they had a spat about this. They had some kind of argument. It lasted a few days, and eventually she relented and gave in and took it down. That's just the Occam's razor here.
I mean, the I mean, I guess I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know how we can cross this bridge. I feel like we just agree to disagree. Like the idea that outside of your house, you're flying an incredibly politically partisan flag, and then you have to rule on it. Like you can say here, we found it. You don't know that? It's flying outside of his house. That's all that matters. It's outside of his house for days, right?
For 3 days, yes.
Yeah. So him coming out after saying, oh, well, it wasn't me, it was my wife. That doesn't make me feel any better. Like, how do I know you're not making Supreme Court decisions based on what your wife wants? If you can't even get a flag taken down, but what if your wife is telling you how to vote in these things too? Do you think husbands and wives talk about, their work? Like, she might have a strong opinion on that. Like, the idea that you would even think that it's acceptable to be married to somebody that thinks it's acceptable to fly an incredibly partisan flag about a Supreme Court case that you might have to rule on, I don't know. That's just, I think a reasonable person could doubt. Now, remember, you have to be absolutely certain, right? If the standard here was a justice should disqualify himself or herself in a proceeding in which the justice's impartiality is absolutely, unquestionably denied, where an unbiased and reasonable person who's aware of all relevant circumstances would be of absolute certainty that the justice could fairly discharge his or her duties. In that case, I would agree with you. Yeah, I can't be absolutely certain that he's, that he's lost his impartiality, but could I have doubts? Absolutely. And any reasonable person, I think, can have doubts here for sure. And the impartiality might absolutely be questioned. I think that's fair.
The reason that that's not fair and that is a poor standard is because in that case, you can make a stronger case that if that is the standard, that all it takes is a reasonable person to doubt that suspect that there might be bias, that they might not be able to be impartial in this case, then no woman can ever rule or make a ruling on anything regarding Roe v. Wade because the biases that they might have in regard to that would require them to recuse themselves. That's the standard that you're wanting here, that no black person can ever make any ruling regarding any racial issue or racial justice issue because they probably are going to be biased when it comes to that. A reasonable person could assume that someone a black justice is going to have some biases and may not be able to be impartial when it becomes to, say, racial gerrymandering laws in a state and making a ruling on that. And I just think that that's such a weak standard that it's going to create so many problems that the cure is worse than the disease here. It cannot be that standard.
I think that the impartiality doesn't have to be on every single aspect of your life. We're not asking for somebody to come in as a blank slate. We do want them to be partial in certain ways. If you nominate a Supreme Court justice that you think believes in a textual, strict interpretation of the Constitution, they're going to be more partial to probably more conservative rulings. Or if you put somebody on the bench that you think is a woman or a black person or whatever, they might have a little bit more partiality or whatever, or more perspective, right, for rulings that are in the favor of those rights as well. That's an okay type of experience or partiality to have. What we don't want are people who are like accepting bribes or who might have just a strict political partiality. These are the types of partialities, or these are the types of ideas that we probably don't want impacting.
Yeah, do you think that Alito was accepting bribes?
Over the flag thing? I don't think so.
Okay, fair enough.
But I'm saying that I don't know if you have people that are flying flags that are showing, like if Sotomayor was flying a flag, saying like, I'm with her, and then there was a court case that came up over whether or not Kamala Harris supporting something was good or bad. I don't know if I feel like Sotomayor. I think that any reasonable person would look at her flying that flag and go, I don't know if Sotomayor's being impartial here. She's really ruling in the way that she feels is the most fair, consistent, logical way to rule, or if she just is politically a fan of Kamala Harris.
Would you say the same thing if a Jewish Supreme Court justice flew an Israeli flag outside their house? Do you think that they should recuse themselves in all cases regarding anything to do with Israel, or anything to do with like AIPAC or anything Israel related?
When you say Israeli, do you mean like a dual citizen, or do you mean somebody of Israeli descent?
Someone of Israeli. Maybe they have. Their mom was from Israel, right? I don't know if that gives them dual citizenship or not, but they've never been to Israel.
I think there's a meaningful difference between like an immigrant who is versus somebody that was born in the USA. I think if you're born in America, I don't think that any type of ethnic background or anything should ever be a grounds for recusal. I think that would be really extreme and unfair.
Even if they're flying a Jewish, an Israeli flag, right? They're flying the Israeli flag. They obviously say, I support Israel and things like that. Do you think they should be required to recuse themselves? And not them, to be clear.
Not if for an American citizen. No, I don't necessarily think so.
Okay, so in this case, what about the flags that Miss Alito flew, right, makes it substantively different than that?
Because they were flying a flag that was explicitly signaling support for the Stop the Steal movement, which isn't even just politically partisan. It was partisan to a very particular understanding of what the January 6th certification should have looked like.
So how do you know that she was flying that in order to support those causes? Because these flags, the two flags in question were an upside down flag, right? An upside down American flag signaling distress, which again has history way before the Stop the Steal movement, right?
Nobody that draws a Nazi sign is drawing it for the peace sign that it used to stand for. It's very obvious that she was supporting the Stop the Steal movement.
In her words, she wasn't. In her words, it was because of an altercation she was having with one of her neighbors, and she was basically just a big fuck you to her. That's the claim that she's making. Whether you
but it was an altercation relating to like differing political views, right?
Sure.
They were flying like some LGBT flag or whatever, so she wanted to fly a flag that she didn't fly a Nazi flag to say a fuck you to the neighbor. She flew a flag for something that she believed in, right?
That the country was in distress.
Yeah, well, it was a stop because of how the election was certified.
I mean, you're assuming that. That is an assumption.
Reasonable.
You can make that like I don't think
any
that's
reasonable person. It's a reasonable person standard. Any reasonable person would make that assumption. Yes.
It is yes. In that case, no, I don't disagree. That's unreasonable to think that it might be that, right? But I don't know if that's enough given the disconnects that also surround this, right? Because that's not the only disconnect. That's not the only inference we're making here. We're making that inference, which I agree, probably reasonable. I'll give you that. But we're also making an inference and guessing, right, that Alito allowed this to happen. When,
which is reasonable.
again, I don't think that is, especially given the context that he says, no, I had her take it down. And the fact that she did take it down after 3 days, again, in the context of no media pressure, no political pressure, no outside pressure that I'm aware of, unless you have something that shows otherwise.
You don't think if you ask 10 people, is it reasonable to assume that if a flag is flying outside of a house that symbolizes a pretty extreme political idea, that the husband and the wife probably both support this idea? You don't think a reasonable person?
I don't know that if that's reasonable, right? Because I'll give you an example in my life, right? I love my mom. My mom's great. She's awesome. She's amazing. I went to visit her down in Florida a couple months ago, right? She's a big Trump supporter. She loves Trump. Okay, she's unfortunately been brain poisoned by Fox News. It's a big argument that we have. That doesn't mean that because I lived in that house too during that time, that her flying the Trump, fuck Biden, Trump is my president flag.
It's a way different relationship, right?
Yeah, it is a different relationship, but we have examples. Do you know who James Carville is?
Why have I heard this name?
Because he was the political director of Bill Clinton's name. He's a big Democratic operative.
Okay. I don't know this. Okay.
For years. Do you know who his wife is?
Nope.
His wife was George H.W. Bush's political operative and worked on his campaign and worked on Republicans' campaign. They've been happily married for over 20 years now, right? They are obviously able to negotiate, right, and have very differing political views. They just don't step on each other's toes like that, right? So the idea that let me finish, right? The idea that because your wife believes something that you must believe that too is just specious. It doesn't track.
It's not, but these aren't random people. Your husband is a Supreme Court justice, and you're flying a flag in front of his house
that he asked you to take down.
Yeah, after 3 days. A flag is being flown in front of your house that represents support for a movement that is going to have a lot of relevant Supreme Court cases coming before it. Arguably some of the most cases, hopefully not. Hopefully it ends up not being that consequential, but that could be some of the most consequential Supreme Court cases in U.S. history. I think a reasonable person could look at that and go, ooh, I don't know if I trust this guy ruling on this stuff. You know, he says that he told his wife to take it down. Now, conveniently, obviously, he's going to testify in a way that is helping his case, because why would he not? But I think a reasonable person could look at it and go, oh, you probably kind of agree with this. And I don't know if you should be ruling on these cases. I can have some doubt there. That's all it takes. It's not doubt. Remember, this isn't like beyond a reasonable doubt. We're not talking like criminal conviction levels. It's just, could a reasonable person doubt that the justice could fairly discharge his or her duties?
But again, the standard is, I disagree with you that is the standard. I think you were tamping that down. The standard is higher than that. It's not just, can a reasonable person make this argument and the argument makes sense? It's, can a reasonable person think that there is no other possibility but that this person must be unbiased?
No, that's not what that means.
I just disagree. Because again, the evidence I will.
No. It's if it doesn't say in which the justice's impartiality is undoubtedly questioned.
Would doubt that the justice could fairly discharge his or her duties.
Yeah. It says in which the justice's impartiality might reasonably be questioned. That's all it's saying.
Which they explain further. That is, and they explain it where an unbiased and reasonable person who is aware of all relevant circumstances would doubt that the justice could fairly discharge his or her duties, which is a larger standard, a higher standard than, okay, well, maybe there's a question about this. The standard is,
they would doubt.
Huh?
Would doubt. They would doubt. Not know for certain, not absolutely be aware that it's impossible, not feel with the strongest convictions. Like, that's it. It would doubt.
Yes, but again, that doubt, that level of doubt has to rise to a reasonable level, and I don't think that someone flying a flag outside their house, which, again, the relevant circumstances are, oh, I recognize that it wasn't him that flew it, and oh, I recognize that he actually told her to take it down, is reasonable. I don't think it's reasonable.
Well, that's if we assume that a person would hear that and believe 100% what's being.
Well, that's the standard, that the reasonable person is aware of all relevant circumstances. So
We're
yes,
not aware of all relevant circumstances. It's not like there's like a criminal investigation or anything, right?
sure, but
You
this
just have the
is
testimony
from
from
the
the Supreme Court
conduct
justice.
code.
That's it.
This is from the code of conduct, where, again, an unbiased and reasonable person who is aware of all relevant circumstances. So we're not talking about people who just saw it on the news at a glance, right? We're not talking about people who just heard about it from Josiah, who's been worm-tonguing them and poisoning them against all conservatives and all conservative things.
I mean, let's say it was a
right?
5-4 court, and let's
Okay.
say that before the court, abortion, came back up somehow. It was, somebody was challenging Dobbs again. Let's say that the court ruled against it, and let's say that the next or ruled in favor. They ruled against Dobbs. They overturned Dobbs, and they brought back, Casey and Roe or some other new abortion protection. And then let's say that the next day, for one day, all of the female Supreme Court justices, there were 5 of them now, were all flying, like "Don't tread on me" with a picture of a uterus instead of a snake or something, right? Or let's say they were flying it. Let's say
that flag. That's a.
or let's say they're flying it before the case came before them, right? So
Sure,
they're
sure,
flying
sure.
all these flags, "Don't tread on my uterus" or whatever, and then this case comes before it, and then let's say that people are saying like, "Wait, hold on, I feel like you guys should have recused yourselves. You're clearly like very politically partisan here." And let's say they were like, "Oh, actually, those were vandalists. They came to our houses and they flew those flags, or it was our husbands or our lesbian wives flew these flags, but we took them down in a couple of days. They just all happened to be flying." Do you think a reasonable person could look at that and go, "I don't feel like I trust your impartiality here"?
Well, the fact that they're women leads me to doubt their impartiality. But fair enough, right? Like,
Let's
I'll
say
go
they're
with
men then. Let's say that they're men and they
Yeah,
have
no,
those flags
I get you.
flying.
I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
yes, under those circumstances, there might be more of a question, right? But again, in that case, the time for recusal has passed, right? The time has just it's done. It's a done deal. What we're talking about in
Okay,
this
wait.
case.
Let's say that there's a case that's about. I mean, we can change this however you
No,
want to
yeah,
make
I
it.
get you.
Let's say that the case is on the docket, then and it's going to be coming before them. Should they recuse themselves?
I don't think that's enough. I just don't. I think that it has to be, especially if, um, they say that they weren't flying the flags. It wasn't them. It was their wives, right? And they asked their wives, "Hey, please take this down," right? I think in that case, that's enough to show, okay, well, I think that's reasonable. I don't like punishing people for something they didn't do. Does that make
Well,
sense?
I mean, they kind of did do it though, right?
How?
It's a marriage. Like this is your house. It's representing to the rest of the world the things that you believe in and your values, right? That's what you're putting out to the world. You as a team have certain beliefs, and as a house that represents both of you, that you're both on. If you're hanging something in front of the house, people would expect that it's representing both of you.
But you, especially if it comes to light that you did not want this to happen, it was an argument and you wanted it taken down. These are the relevant circumstances surrounding it. Then I think it's perfectly fine not to recuse yourself. And in fact,
Yeah, but unfortunately we have no proof of any of that. I think me and Dan both said that like
proof. This isn't a court of law.
Well,
you don't need
technically,
proof.
it definitionally is a court of law, the highest law, technically of all the land.
Okay.
But no. I mean, I'm just saying that if there was a video of Alito, like coming home from work and he sees his flag and he's like outside, like trying to tear it down, he's like screaming, like, "The fuck is going on out here?" Whatever. And then I'm like, oh shit, okay, he definitely didn't want this, right? But the fact that he's just writing in a letter and saying like, "Hey, listen, my wife hung this up. I asked her to take it down. Like, what am I supposed to do?" LOL. I don't know if I believe that or not. And I think a reasonable person could be like, okay, yeah, I'm sure he's trying to save his ass now, or blame it on his wife and she's fine with it. That makes me really uncomfortable. I don't want to see people flying flags saying like, "I'm going to support this policy position," and then they can just blame it on their wife and have a get out of jail free card.
Look at the time period here. The only reason he was writing this letter at all or responding to these is because of a New York Times article that dropped in May of this year. These events were from years ago, right? Well, 2023 was one of the flags, and the other flag was, I think, in 2021. But again, the time period lapse, right? To expect him to have evidence of that time period in which, again, no media was being done. And in fact, some media did have the story, but just didn't run it because they didn't think it was an issue. I think that's very unreasonable to expect him to have that kind of evidence just sitting there. So unless there is counter evidence that show he's lying in this case, then we kind of have to take him at his word. And if you like, I get that you don't believe him, right?
Here's a
Fair
question.
enough, but
Based
you
on
need
everything you know from
evidence.
Alito, okay, God comes down and God is holding a gun to your head, and God is saying, "I need you, Wick, to guess." Do you think that Alito agrees with the Stop the Steal movement, or do you think he's opposed to it? What do you think? How would you answer? Like, what percentage would you give there on that?
Whether I think that he probably has some sympathies in regards to the Stop the Steal movement. Yeah.
So, like, over 50% supports it, or
Oh, sure. Why not? 55, 60, 75, something like that, right?
okay? I think any reasonable person would say, obviously, Alito, yeah, probably most likely
Probably.
supports the Stop the Steal
But we
movement.
don't
Sure.
require justices not to have opinions on things
No,
or
but we don't
political
expect them to
stances.
show them publicly because it would
Yes,
threaten the
that's
impartiality
true.
of the court or the perceived impartiality of
I
the court.
agree. And he didn't show it publicly. His wife did. It wasn't
It's
him,
okay.
which is
Maybe
the
we.
difference here. That's the difference. It
I don't
wasn't
agree. I don't
him.
think there is a substantial difference there, but
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Is there anything else on this that you had or you wanted to take me on? I think we've reached a wall here.
We
Does
have
any of your
indeed.
strongest soldiers want to come in and fight me on this? I don't know.
I don't know. Dan might want to.
Okay. Dan had a interesting take. He lit like I watched him do this live. He made up a story in his head. Okay. Sans any evidence, and then he challenged Pisco on it and told Pisco he was retarded if he didn't believe his made up story. Okay.
Damn.
That's what happened. I watched this happen live, right? So if Dan wants to come in and talk, I would be more than happy. Or if Josiah, I know I already beat Josiah in Boy. I had a debate with them on this very subject weeks ago, which is why Josiah probably brought it up to you. He was licking his wounds, right? Still maulding over his very large
Maulding.
defeat. Yes. But if any of them want to jump on in, we'll open it up. Or if anyone thinks Destiny's stupid, and wants to take him on, yeah, we can open this up a little bit because I think we've gone the rounds on this. In Pursuit of Knowledge for $10 says, I can't believe Wick, same guy that says if his wife made a cake he didn't want, he has every right to be angry at her. And now Wick is defending a wife flying a flag that this man didn't want. Not defending it. I'm saying that it was taken down, and Alito didn't want it, asked it to take it down, and he took it down. And I guess while we're waiting for people, let me ask you this. Do you worry, Destiny, that making these accusations against Alito, right? Making these accusations against the Supreme Court saying it's been obliterated, do you worry that it is eroding trust in the institution in the same way?
It's already at an all-time low.
But this is not helping with people's trust in the
I
institution.
think they're not helping themselves. I think maybe we should have some reforms and some changes.
What would be your number one reform that you'd do to the Supreme Court if you could?
I think some sort of like mandatory ethics things are probably important. I do think that some kind of term limit stuff is probably important as well. One Supreme Court justice per president or two per president or something like that would probably be good. Yeah.
Like what kind of that's very broad, like a term limit. I go back and forth on term limits. On the one hand, I understand that maybe a lifetime appointment can run into some issues. But what would be the mechanism that we'd have in place if we went to term limits that would keep a justice from having a company come to them and saying, hey, buddy, Justice Alito, okay, we have a on the docket right now. We have a case.
I don't think term limits. I don't think term limits are for keeping the justices impartial. I like term limits because it ensures an even selection from presidential elections of Supreme Court justices. That's why I like term limits.
Fair, but then the problem becomes the issue of them being more susceptible to political pressure, bribes, etc. When it comes,
well, I think them being more bribable is when they are is if they're like running for re-election. It's not like you could have your term end and then you could run for election again.
Well, no,
right?
You'd have your term end and then you'd get to serve a cush consulting job on the company that you
do that right now.
I don't think they serve consulting jobs. There are issues.
Wait. You can do what you're saying right now. They could do right now. No.
Are they allowed? Does anyone know in chat? Does anyone know?
Why would you not? Yeah. What's to keep Alito from just retiring right now and then going to work on a consulting firm?
Good question. I don't actually know.
Yeah, you could do that right now if you want.
Fair enough. I do know that currently they do get book deals. They do get all expenses paid vacations, right? Ruth Bader Ginsburg got an all expense paid vacation to Israel after she ruled on a case regarding what her benefactor's company. And this happens all across the political spectrum. Clarence Thomas has a lot of accusations of this. Alito has some accusations of this. Gernsburg, what's his name? Gornsberg? How do you say that fucking name? The guy's name starts with a G.
Gorsuch?
Gorsuch, thank you. Gorsuch actually, the company that bought his house after he becomes Supreme Court judge, was something that he ruled on a case regarding. So this happens all the time. And I think that the fact that we're focusing on the flag stuff and calling for recusals there, while we got justices all across the ideological spectrum getting all expenses paid trips, and we're just mum's the word on that, it frustrates me, my friend.
I would have to see more, especially being in the industry. When somebody says all expenses paid trip, that could mean a lot of different things depending on what we're talking about. So like, because I was curious, I just looked up this RBG thing, and it says that she was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Genesis Prize Foundation. Shortly following the award ceremony, she disclosed being provided transportation, food, and lodging as a tourist and guest of billionaire Israeli businessman Morris Khan. If she's being provided transportation, food, and lodging, this is like cost for an airplane ticket and then your hotel and food while you're there. That's like standard compensation for literally anything. You're always going to be compensated that. Otherwise, you'd never be able to travel anywhere to accept any reward or award or literally do anything, because you're not going to pay your own way for every single place you're going. But also, I don't think it's reasonable to assume that you're being bribed because somebody's giving you an airplane ticket and hotel and food to some other place. Like, I think accepting gifts or cash, I think, is a much bigger deal than that.
What if they buy your mother's house? Pour
that would be a big deal. I think that's probably not
of dollars into it, and then let the mom live there rent free. Do you think that's
I think that'd probably be not good. That would be a gift.
Well, that happens. Or if you get an Indonesian vacation on a private jet and a super yacht, that would probably be something that maybe it's a little above the it's a trip worth $500,000 to be clear, right? Yes, I understand what you're saying, and there's might be some reasonable things here, but again, across the ideological spectrum, we see this happen again and again and again, where they're just getting these lavish gifts from billionaires and millionaires, and then also ruling on stuff that shares an interest with these millionaires and billionaires.
I guess. I don't agree as these being, like, I'm just reading this, like, Justice Samuel Alito disclosed 6 trips, including trips to Rome, Italy, and Zurich, Switzerland for university conferences, disclosing 13 trips. And then this, like, for Alito there, if he's getting paid to go to Rome, Italy, to Rome or Zurich for university conferences, like, that's fine. Like, if he's getting like his ticket and he's getting like a hotel room to do like a speech or whatever, like, that's, I don't think this is like a huge problem. I don't think it's a problem at all. That's fine. It's people are being provided
wild
gifts.
To me that you think that the flag thing is more of a problem than this.
Okay, I think that one is like very clearly a problem, and the other is very easily defensible. Like, on the flip side, do you think that if somebody, let's say that I invite, well, let's say I've got a canvassing event coming up. Let's say that I want to invite a Supreme Court justice to come and give a speech at our canvassing event. Okay. Do you think that I'm not allowed to cover their flight and hotel, that they should have to cover that on their own?
No, I think that would be fine as long as it's reported. I also think it'd
well,
be
that's
fine.
so then these things were. So then what's the difference between that and what I've just read from Alito here, that he had university conferences?
Because again, these aren't the only trips that they're taking. And if you were flying them out on a super yacht, right? I think that would be, I would have questions, right? Like, okay. And especially, like, so say you have a court case coming up, okay? And it's going to be coming in front of the Supreme Court. Do you think that changes the situation where you're offering to fly them out to speak at your conference and offering to pay them room and board?
I'm not sure. It's not a big advantage that you're getting flown out somewhere. Like, what do you... Like, I'm definitely going to roll, because these guys are offering to fly me out. They're going to pay $2,000 on my plane ticket and hotel that I'm going to, like I said, if you're getting gifts, I think that's a big deal. If you're not disclosing anything, that's obviously a huge deal. If you're getting money, that's a huge deal. But you're getting like an airplane ticket and a hotel comped for you. Like these are standard business expenditures for every single person around the world that flies or does anything for business or gives speeches or accepts
Yes,
awards or
but
whatever.
you can understand how someone just so they rule on the case regarding Destiny versus Hassan, right? You had finally went to the Supreme Court. It went up the thing, and they ruled on it. And then later on, people found out
Mhm.
that you had bought him an all expenses paid trip to speak at your conference. Don't you think that that would cast a little bit of a doubt on the impartiality and the ruling of the Supreme Court?
No, I don't think so.
No?
I think
Oh
that if I were to
my
see somebody,
goodness.
if I were to see that like this guy had to roll me and that he had gotten flown out, by Hassan to give a speech in like some LA thing, I would be thinking like, oh fuck this motherfucker. He always agreed with Hassan. Fuck this dude, right? Now if Hassan awarded him like a 1 week vacation through Italy, well that would be a lot different. I'd be like, wait, hold on, this guy's literally giving you vacations.
It's
The
not a
fuck?
vacation. They just happened to have the speaking event in Italy. It happened to last a week. And obviously, these are just
Those things
business expenses,
you're talking
right?
about totally different things right now. Like even the term all expenses paid, like every single podcast I've ever done, well, I'm sorry, that's not true, but most of them in the past 2 years have been all expenses paid. But these aren't vacations for me. They just cover the hotel, they cover the flight, and maybe they'll stipend me for food. But that's not like an exquisite vacation, right? These are way different than like, oh, I'll send you, through Italy for a
But
week.
the
That's a
point
way different thing.
is that it casts doubt on the impartiality of the justice in a way that I think is far above and beyond someone's wife flying a flag. Josiah has paid some money to do some super chats, so we're gonna do that. $10 from Pondering Politics to say late to this, and I don't know if you discussed it yet, but you and Stephen had major disagreements about court reform in general. You could explore that if the flag topic has run its course. $10 more to say, or what Democrats are permitted to do politically against bad faith Republicans. Major disagreement there. Testing out suggestions. Well, thank you. I think we're having a great conversation. But suggestions are always welcome. And Josiah, if you want to jump on, feel free. But yeah, I think that if we are looking at what a reasonable person can expect, right, or what a reasonable person would expect that, oh, there might be some doubt on whether this can be partial or impartial or not. I think that finding out that a company had given you I won't use had paid your way, right, to go to a conference in Italy and speak at a conference casts more doubt for me than a justice wife
Wait,
made
like
it
give an
through.
example. Like give an example for this. So
Sure.
let's say that ExxonMobil has a case before the Supreme Court, and let's say that like 2 weeks or a month or two before, there's some conference in fucking Rome or Paris or some bullshit, right? And they're invited to speak on behalf of I don't know, whatever, however they feel fossil fuels. I don't even know what the fuck you would invite somebody like this to speak out on for.
Me neither, which would make it a little weird. Or a pharmaceutical company, right? A pharmaceutical company invites maybe they know one of the justices has had
Okay, so then wait. So then here's a question:
arthritis,
is
for
there even
example.
an example of a trip like this happening? Because
Uh,
most of the things I'm reading in this article all seem like universities, like they're being invited to speak. Like for Samuel Alito, it was in Rome, Italy, and Zurich, Switzerland for university conferences. For Justice Sonia Sotomayor, traveled to a number of universities for award ceremonies and conferences. Elena Kagan gave a number of speeches at universities. Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh took 4 trips.
sure,
Padua, Italy, as part of a George Mason University educational
here's an
program.
easy
Like,
one. And this
okay.
is Justice Clarence Thomas. And I'll send you a link to it too. 20 years, and this happened year after year for 20 years. Justice Clarence Thomas has been treated to luxury vacations by billionaire Republican donor Harlan Crow. Uh, goes
I
on
need
cruises,
wait. I need
flies
information. You're not
private
telling me
jets.
anything. Wait, you're not telling me anything. What is the vacation? What are we talking about?
Okay, I'm looking this up right now. So in 2019, right after the U.S. Supreme Court released its final opinion on the term, Justin Clarence Thomas boarded a large private jet headed to Indonesia. He and his wife were going on vacation, 9 days of island hopping in a volcanic archipelago on a super yacht staffed by a coterie of attendants and a private chef. If he had chartered the plane and the 162-foot yacht himself, the total cost of the trip would have exceeded $500,000. Fortunately for him, that wasn't necessary. He was on vacation with real estate magnate.
Yeah, okay, wait. So this sounds like way different in
Mm.
kind than somebody just getting invited to like make a speech somewhere, right? This sounds like
Sure.
he just literally got to go on a $500,000 vacation.
Yes. But it was in a statement, Crow acknowledged that he'd extended hospitality to the Thomases over the years, but said that Thomas never asked for any of it and was no different from the hospitality we would have extended to many of our other dear friends. Right? But
What is yeah?
does
There's still
that raise any red flags? The fact that he'd been getting vacation for 20 years about this from this guy.
I mean, I don't know what this guy's associated with, but if any companies or maybe if this guy was brought before the Supreme Court in some way, I maybe would question the impartiality. Yeah, for sure. But also, again, this is like a far different type of thing in kind than the university speeches and getting your room and plane comped. Also, was he disclosing these or were these undisclosed?
I'm looking.
Because if these weren't disclosed, that's probably because it's looking like, because I'm looking at this ProPublica article you're talking about, it sounds like this is not disclosed. For more than 2 decades, Thomas has accepted luxury trips virtually every year from the Dallas businessman without disclosing them. So that's the issue. This has nothing to do with impartiality or anything. I think this just sounds like an issue with a lack of disclosure. And the lack of disclosure, I think, is probably a really big deal. I would say that even if you're giving university speeches, if you're not disclosing, that's probably a big deal. But if you are disclosing, I don't know if I would have an issue with Thomas's stuff here. I'd have to see like what political situations are being implicated. But the lack of disclosure is pretty worrying.
Yeah. My point here with all of this is that this kind of thing happens a lot, and we're finding out more and more about this. And this is, again, across the ideological spectrum that we see these. We know about the ones that they disclose, but they're not required technically to disclose a lot of them, right? So how we don't know. There were some like 1,309 Supreme Court justices trips that Supreme Court justices took, and between 2004 and 2019, and you can find this on the Open Secrets website. I don't know. You might think they all just stayed at a Holiday Inn, right? And they were just getting the bare minimum. But I do think that there is questions that could be raised, even if a university they're treating you to the 5-star hotels, right, when you're down there speaking, when they're doing all this for you. Yes, there is this argument can be made, oh, that's just a business expense anyone gets. But the fact that you are ruling on cases involving them, I don't know, it lends a little fucky-wucky. It feels fucky-wucky to me. Does that make sense?
Sure, maybe, yeah.
I guess. I don't know. Like, this is one of those things where it's, I don't know, the differences I'm seeing between how you're treating this information and the differences that I'm seeing.
We're not even talking about anything of substance right now, right? You're painting over this with such a broad brush. Like, is the implication, because I asked you earlier, is the implication that if any Supreme Court justice is invited to speak to a university, they always have to pay their own way? Is that what the expectation should be? Or should it be that nobody ever gives any speeches ever? Or that when you're a Supreme Court justice, nobody's allowed to comp a flight? Like, and then you're talking about this in the same breath, talking about Alito taking $500,000 9-day vacations.
Okay,
These are
I'll make a big
things.
statement here that I think that if a court case comes across your desk as a Supreme Court justice and you have received paid trips, right, to speaking events on this, I think that there is a stronger argument that you should recuse yourself for that than the argument against Alito recusing himself for flying a flag, or his wife flying a flag. Yes, I think there's a stronger argument.
If Harvard invites you to speak, and so they give you a hotel room and they pay for your flight, you're not allowed to rule on like the affirmative action case?
I think that there's a stronger argument for that than there is for Alito recusing himself. Now, I don't think either should be required to recuse themselves, to be clear. But I think that the argument that someone would have for you can't rule in the case involving Harvard because they paid your way and gave you a trip, right, and put you up in a hotel room, all this, then your wife flew a flag.
Okay. I disagree, but
okay, we disagree. So $5 from Brian Grieber. A reasonable person would assume they've had a conversation beforehand. This isn't a mistake you should be able to make even once without recourse. I don't know, right? It probably never came up beforehand, right? There's very few situations I could imagine where you'd fly a normal flag or a flag where there would be a court case where you flying that flag would signal, I don't know, allegiance to a side, other than maybe the American flag or veterans flag. And I think it's fairly reasonable to fly a "We support our troops" or an MIA flag, right? I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I need to go down and start getting ready for my show. So
Well,
I love you, Wick.
thank you for taking the time. I've enjoyed this conversation. And all I'll ask in closing is that you take a beat and maybe give a little bit more good faith to conservatives in this trying time. They're going through a hard time. Their dear leader Trump got shellacked last night, got destroyed, and they may need your support. Okay, buddy?
That's okay. They can learn to be more ethical and more moral, and then we'll accept them back into the fold. So
Okay. I'll see you later, Destiny. Bye.
have fun. Bye.
What a fun talk. Didn't last that long, but we kind of reached an impasse early. Did you guys enjoy the conversation? Did you enjoy the show? This way, for $20, is there an example where a Supreme Court justice recused themselves based on an implied position of the justice's spouse or a person related to the justice's or the justice's spouse within the third degree of relationship? I don't know. Sleepy Noodle says, "Oh, shut up." Make me. You know what? If you pay me enough money, I'll shut up. How's that? Cacophony says, "Every time he says I love you, I want to throw up because he's a fucking sociopath." We like Destiny. I like Destiny. I think he's a little brain poisoned on this one. But I think he's a good guy. $5 from Pondering Politics. Stop trying to undo all my good work, Whick. No, I am going to be the angel on his shoulder. And the devil may win time to time, but I'm going to pull him back to the side of light, truth, and righteousness. I think that we need to be, at least, if we want good faith to be given to us, we should at least be willing to hear the other side out. So again, unless there's evidence that Alito's wife wasn't the one that flew that flag, then we should take Alito at his word. Did I miss any super chats? Oh, I missed a couple. $10 from Audacity. I think a major part of the you are missing is the information is disclosed willingly versus if it is discovered or leaked. One infers occlusion, in which could be the intent to deceive. I don't know. Like, are you talking about are you alleging that Alito didn't disclose that his wife flew a flag years ago? I don't know if he should be expected to. I don't know if it's reasonable that who would he report it to? Exactly. Again, this story didn't break till May of 2024. Yeah, $5 from Spaceman. Thank you for the $5. This money. $5 from Soyaddle. In government contract compliance training today, I learned that $50 meals are enough to indicate a potential bribe. $50 meal. The most I can't think of a restaurant I've been to that charged over maybe $30 for my specific meal. I've paid more when I've had friends, right? But like, I think the most I've ever paid for a single meal is like $35. Julian Traversa for $5. If there's an illicit drug in a household, simply owning the house provides probable cause for charges. Why do you think it should work different with a flag? Because a flag, there's nothing illegal or illicit about it, right? There's nothing illegal or illicit about it. So yeah, flags are not drugs. And it provides probable cause for charges, but you'd need more evidence, I would assume. I'm not a trial lawyer, right? But you would need more evidence than drugs were in your house. You might not, honestly, but you should. We found cocaine in your apartment. Usually there's more to it, right? Like there's a toxicology report that comes along with it. I don't know. But flags aren't illegal. There is nothing inherently illegal about flying a flag. There just isn't. $10 from Per Thompson. Your debates are always fun and interesting, even though I strongly disagree with you in this case. That's fine. If you guys want to come in and talk, Cacophony says most I paid was $250 per person 10 years ago for food. What were you eating that was $250? What were you being served that was $250? What were you eating? Gold? What is going on? Okay, Adicity wants to call in. I see a couple of you. Okay, we'll do some calls. Hello, you're live.
Hey, man.
Hey, what's up? What do you think?
Well, it's just touching back on the disclosure point. When you guys were talking about if they take trips, if they're given vacations, blah, blah, blah.
You're breaking. You're like, I don't know, something's wrong with your audio. You're popping.
Terrible. Hold on one second, sir.
Yeah. Hopefully he can fix his audio. Solemn Argus says, "What's up, Chat and Whick? I was watching on the Destiny side. Or what was the worst name that they were calling me? I'm curious. What was the worst name they were calling me? Is that better? Yeah. I think yeah. Okay. So what did you want to talk about, sir?
Okay, so touching on the disclosure point, if you're being given vacations and whatnot, and you have a duty to disclose and you're not disclosing it, you're touching on inclusion, you're touching on the different types of fraud regarding your requirement to disclose. Fraudulent non-disclosure, negligent non-disclosure, stuff like that. So that's when you're in that position, you're not disclosing things. It's a lot different than if you are disclosing those things operationally. Like if Alito or Thomas go on a vacation, someone pays for it, but they're telling the public that this is what's happening. I feel that's representative that they can still be impartial. They can still do their duty properly because they're still following essentially the rules.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Look, my point here isn't that they should recuse themselves. My point's actually the opposite, especially if they disclosed. If they disclosed, I don't think they should, because that doesn't mean they can't be impartial. My point was, with bringing all that up, bringing up all the other situations I brought up, was that those are stronger cases than the case that is being brought against Alito in the flag situation. That these cases are more reasonable to suspect that there might be impartiality than there is in the situation of Alito. Because again, I just don't think that people who think that he is tainted beyond the ability to serve in a position of impartial justice, I don't think that's a reasonable take.
No, yeah, you're making the argument that there's more reasonable determination of a smoke signal in that direction, that there might be a fire than there is in that direction. Yeah.
Or again,
totally get it.
Again, if there's like an immutable characteristic at play, I am more likely to think it's probably harder for you to be unbiased than if someone who isn't you says something, right? Like when one of your family members makes a political statement.
And that's another thing I wanted to touch on, is that for what it is operationally, a flag is a method of opinion in all actuality. If you're just flying, if you just have it in your front yard or whatever, it's opinion. You're not swearing allegiance to something, which I think is what you touched on.
Justices should not be giving opinions on upcoming cases. They just shouldn't.
Personal opinions, but this wasn't Alito giving his personal opinion.
Him.
Right. I mean, from what we can glean from
if it was him, look, if evidence comes out tomorrow and there's a secret recording of Alito himself flying that flag, my position switches.
Yep. Perfect. All right, man. Cool. That's all I wanted to touch on. Got to go feed the kids. Love you, buddy. Take care.
Enjoy. Is he feeding his kids the $250 meal? I don't know. What are you guys saying in chat here? Audacity audio is processed in Linux, maybe. Solemn Argus says, I'll be honest, I wasn't watching the chat. Who's watching the chat over there? Tuke says, I'm pretty sure Destiny's community is fairly Wick friendly, though. Could be wrong. The current arc, though. Toby1 Kenobi says Destiny lost the debate today, and he's still like whatevers. I still disagree. I am curious, honestly, and don't spare my feelings if you think I lost here. Whether you agree or disagree with me, how do you think I did? I don't usually debate Destiny. This is only like the second time I've actually debated Destiny on a thing. I'm curious how I did. I think I did fairly well. We did reach a point where I think I just won early, and there wasn't really anywhere to go, and so I was just looking for content, so I just kept going. But yeah, I think that overall I laid out my points fairly succinctly. I think I was fairly persuasive, but I would believe that I'm biased, right? What is a good email to reach out to you? Just come to my Discord. I'll give you the link to my Discord. Just contact me there. Give me a second. Audacity says you did well, but it's not a major topic. You won the debate on what to get for dinner, and essentially, I'll take it. Frozen Knight says, I think you try to take these points with the highest charity only. Fair. I do go for charity. Hey, what's up?
Hello. How's it going?
Yeah, what do you think?
I obviously disagree. I've disagreed with you about this topic before. I think we
Sure. How do you think I did, though?
I think,
Disagree or...
I think he didn't push enough about what I'm going to be talking about.
Oh, okay. You think Destiny failed your side?
I think he did fail my side.
Mm.
There is a
Do you think
real
he's
issue,
just too
I
nice
think.
to me? Do you think he's too nice?
Nah, I don't think he's too nice to you. I don't think he's particularly hostile or not. You know what I mean? It's a small disagreement, but it's the biggest difference. You believe that a spouse can do whatever they want in their household without the consent of their partner, correct?
No, not whatever, right? Like if they're having like drug-fueled cocaine orgies.
Okay, I know that was
Okay.
uncharitable, man. That
Right?
was too
If they're
far. I know.
if they're keeping Jews in their attic, okay,
yeah, I know,
right?
I know,
like
I know.
okay, fair
But
enough.
flying a flag,
But flying
is
a flag
fine.
or having a sign, a yard sign. If she put out a Trump stop the steal yard sign, and then he saw it and was like, take that shit down, and she's like, nah, and then they argued about it for a few days, and then she eventually relented and took it down. I don't think he should recuse himself.
Well, he obviously didn't see it for a couple days, right? Like he would have noticed it pretty immediately, right?
Maybe. Like we're assuming that he was at his residence at the time, which I don't know if he was. Maybe.
Well,
he was
wouldn't
on
that be
Capitol
worse
Hill.
then? Wouldn't that be worse if she's knowingly flying flags while he's away to point towards a political ideology that he's ruling for? And I mean, we know his statements afterwards, right? Which
Sure.
were, he said
When he was made aware
I
of
didn't
it,
like
he
that.
told her to stop.
Right. So you're saying, oh, this is worse then, isn't it? Like, if that's the case, like,
Worse in what way?
worse than the fact that she's trying to hide it. She's trying to do things while he's gone.
Hold on. Have you ever been like in a relationship?
I'm literally just got
Yeah.
married.
Oh,
Yeah.
Congratulations. Oh, I remember. I remember you told me.
Yeah.
Does your wife ask you for permission before she does a thing all the time?
If it's about like putting out political messages or how we present our home to others, absolutely. We have a conversation about that every time. She's a big time decorator. Okay,
I've been in
let me go into
relationships
this
before. Hold on, I've been in relationships before where I come home and I see something's different with the house. What's going on? And my significant other is like, "Oh, well, I decided to do this while you were away." And it's not really usually a big deal. But if she does something that's
about a political
really
message while the guy's the Supreme Court.
Hold on,
justice,
I've actually had a fight
different.
with a significant other about this before because they would like my space in the house would become slowly edged out because their stuff starts eroding into encroaching, I should say, into my space, and I'm like, okay, I have to put my foot down at some point. But I wouldn't
That
say
relationship
most.
didn't last, right?
What are you talking about?
Oh, I'm asking. Did that?
I don't talk
relationship
about
last?
my current relationship.
Okay, well, that's
right?
fine.
We
I understand.
I don't even imply.
What I'm
right?
saying is, I would have to guess that you had to put your foot down, obviously, because she's completely taken away that
But
trust
the
you had
point
between
here
each other.
the point here is that she didn't ask permission. She didn't like, and I've done similar things. I've done similar things where something's about the house is bothering me and I want to change it, so I just do. And if it's a problem, they tell me about it and we negotiate it.
Right.
But
It's a
I
problem.
don't like what I'm saying is I don't think that Miss Alito thought it was anything to fly this flag. I don't think she thought about it. And I think that her husband saw it and was like, "Oh shit." And he, because he's a Supreme Court justice, was like, "This might be a problem. I think you should take it down." And they had a fight about it, and eventually she relented. That is the Occam's razor of what happened.
I think it's not okay. It's not okay. Yes, there are different degrees.
What do you think he
Obviously,
should have
having
done
an
about this?
orgy or whatever.
Hold on. What do you
Say
think
now?
he should have done about this? So
What
it's your
should he have
wife.
done?
It's your wife. You're the Supreme Court justice. Okay. Your wife. You come home. Your wife has a flag.
I
about
divorce
a
her
case.
immediately. Are you kidding
Just a
me?
divorce.
This
Like
bitch
I'm
is trying to-
divorcing. I'm made immediately.
Absolutely. This bitch is trying to, number one, destroy my political career, flying flags because she doesn't like pride flags across the lake. Number two, she's trying to signal to the rest of the, everybody else of certain ideologies and try to get my ass in trouble while she doesn't face any fucking repercussions. What repercussions does she face? None. She has nothing to lose. He has everything to lose. And she gains everything because she's putting forward her political message, telling everybody, hey guys, no, he's with us. Believe me, I'm his wife. No, it's disgusting.
Disgusting.
It's so disgusting.
Okay. I think that's a little hyperbolic, buddy.
Okay, and I'm gonna go through how you talked about how baking a cake. We agreed. We're on the same side about the cake controversy. The Reddit
the reason that the cake controversy is different is because in the case of the cake controversy, before the cake is made, before the cake is given, you have explicitly expressed a desire for a thing. I want X. And knowing that and saying, I want X, but I don't want Y. Give me X, but without the Y. And then your significant other comes home and says, here's the cake, and it has Y in it. Yeah. That's a substantively different situation than me coming home one day, not even really thinking about flags. We haven't really had this conversation because why would it come up?
I think why would it come up?
No,
this is where I disagree with you, Whick. I would assume, because of the background information that I've seen from this woman, she's a big flag person. Okay, she loves flags.
She does love.
I get it. I love flags too. Yeah. Flags are my favorite thing. I can name practically every country.
She's a flag.
I'm a huge vexologist.
She's
okay,
she's a flag.
No, it's vexology. Okay, get it right. Please don't try to make up words for our kind. Okay, those are our words. Anyway, the whole point is that I have to assume now, knowing her background and about the relationship, absolutely they've had a conversation about her putting up political flags in epic when people know that he's a Supreme Court justice. All right, let's change that one variable then, because that's where I'm coming from. If you knew that they've had a conversation and she's been told, do not put up, American flag, fine. Even campaign, bumper stickers or whatever, a sign for Trump on the front yard. Even a Trump flag, maybe under an American flag. Let's not do, the one where he's got he's jacked and he's behind a tank and it's like he's Rambo.
Okay.
If you knew that they've had that conversation and she went and did it while he was away, would you agree that that is not a healthy relationship and that he is in every right to get away from this fucking bitch? Is she a bitch? Is she not a bitch?
I'm not comfortable calling her a bitch.
Okay. All right. Is she a bad person?
I'm not comfortable calling. I don't think you're a bad person if you're expressing your First Amendment right just for expressing it.
I'm not talking about that.
I think that if she does,
I'm talking about that.
If she does,
if she did it behind his back, that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about her expressing her First Amendment right.
Purposely tried to deceive him. Sure.
Yes. That would make her a bad person, right?
If it was a purposely attempt to deceive, then sure, yes. What evidence do you have that she purposely attempted to deceive him?
The past conversations that I've read and heard from her saying that she's a big flag person, there's
Do you
absolutely
know when that
a
conversation, because I
chance.
think I've read the same conversation. That conversation was recorded after the incident.
Yeah, I understand.
So
Yeah,
after
of
they
course.
had their discussion.
No, I have to assume that they've had that conversation before.
Why? Why are you assuming that?
Because she's a big flag person. Absolutely, he would have
Yeah, but
set boundaries about that.
most flags probably weren't a threat to the integrity of his job. Why would they be?
I mean, there are a lot of bad flags out there. I don't know about
Okay,
most
like,
flags.
look,
I mean,
we're not talking a
I don't
Nazi
know what that
flag
means.
here.
I don't know what you mean by that.
We're talking an upside down American flag, which has connotations way outside the Stop the Steal thing, right?
Yes, it means America in distress.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not okay. That's not okay coming from a Supreme Court justice. Absolutely not. Especially when it comes from a ruling like this. Absolutely not. Absolutely.
I think you're being a little
not.
crazy on this.
I understand you do think that. I think that you agree with me with the cake thing, and that yes, I am loading it a little bit because of course we're never going to have all the information about this. But knowing that she's a big flag person, knowing that he is a Supreme Court justice, and knowing that she did it when he wasn't there, they've had a conversation about this, and she was intentionally trying to deceive him and put him in hot water, especially since they had an argument about it, obviously, and she took down the fucking flag because she's a bad person.
No,
that's what I gotta
to
say.
her husband. She submitted to her husband. I think she did the right thing and eventually listening to her husband. Okay. But thanks for calling in, buddy.
Yeah, man.
I'll
Catch
talk
you later.
to you. Hey, you're live. What do you got? Hello.
Hello.
Hi. What do you have for me?
Yeah, going back to the flag thing. I kind of side with you, but I also like one of my big disagreements and one of the big things that other people were talking about is like it depends on how politically charged the topic is in the public. And in particular, in that moment, like flags are like a really big deal, particularly the Jan 6 flag that she was talking about,
Sure.
and a pride flag.
Probably why he asked her to take it down.
Yeah, but at the same token, she knows he's a Supreme Court justice, and one of my big issues with what you're going to, as I think you're giving her too much leeway, and I think you're being too charitable.
Honestly, to me, it doesn't matter what her opinion has. It's what his opinion is, and what, more importantly, what opinions he publicly expresses before a trial. That's what matters, right? Not what his wife says or does, but what opinions he himself publicly expresses before a trial.
Okay, I see where you're going at. So like if during what was that Dred Scott case, right? Where about
years
slaves
ago, like back in the 1800s?
Yeah, back in this like about slaves and stuff,
Sure.
right? And there like what if there was a I think during the time a lot of the Supreme Court justices and even their like wives and stuff, they had slaves themselves when they were deciding that case.
Okay.
Back then, would you say if like the wives at that time like gave public announcements about how much they love slavery and stuff, that the Supreme Court justice should have recused themselves? I know it might not be the best example, but
because it's their wives, it's not them.
So you think it would have been okay?
If you think hold on, do you think they should have recused themselves in that case?
Yes.
Okay.
In that case.
What about if it was their moms?
Well, it's a bit different if
Is it?
they're like publicly. Yeah, it is because they're living with them and then they're publicly.
No, they live with their mom. Their mom, they take care of their mom. Their mom's sickly, elderly, right? They stay in the same house.
Okay, that is a good point. That does change it a lot. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
What about their son? Like their 16-year-old son hasn't gotten out of anything, or no, let's keep them adult. Let's say it's their 20-year-old deadbeat son who refuses to get out of the house, right? And they're just crashing on the couch, okay? They get up and start saying, "We love slavery. Slavery's great. I love slaves." You think that should require the dude, the justice, to recuse himself?
If it's their son.
I'm trying to narrow it down to, is
yeah,
it just
I think
spouses?
probably yeah. It depends on how close. Like if their son's like older, and they're like, even if they are like if they're estranged or something, because I know during that time period people lived more and like they lived what's that called? They didn't have as many like separate homes. You know what I mean? Like people lived with their like grandparents and shit during that time period.
Yeah.
So I would say yeah, probably.
They should recuse just because their son, their mom, their family member. What about a cousin?
Cousin, yeah, it starts getting more murky at that point.
Okay. See, I don't think that a judge should have to recuse themselves for the First Amendment expression of their family members. Now, if the case was ruling on what is going to happen to their family members and directly impact them materially, then sure, yes, they should recuse themselves. But if it wasn't regarding that at all, right? Like if they were just spouting off on their political opinion, then no, I don't think the judge should be held accountable for that or have to recuse themselves for that. Why would it? It's something he didn't say.
Okay.
Or
yeah,
she, I guess, if we're being...
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you've changed my opinion.
I'm
I think
glad.
you're right.
Dilemma, thanks
Yeah.
for calling in. I'm glad we can
Yeah.
take you to the light. I'll see you later, buddy.
Okay.
Okay, what you got?
Yo, Wick, how's it going?
Living life.
So I feel like the flag conversation's a little dead. I don't really know if I
If you
support
got
Destiny's
something else,
take on
go
that.
for it. Like I
Yeah.
understand that people don't want to talk about it anymore because I took a total Wick victory, 100%, right? No scope, 360
I'm not sure.
headshot,
I fully agree
destroyed
there.
all
But it's kind of
arguments
like a
against
difference
it.
of values
Yeah.
between you and Destiny. So
Fair.
it's
Fair.
one of those things
I'm
that you
fucking
you guys
around, but
couldn't
yeah.
make it any further. You guys kind of agreed on all the facts and like, I don't really.
Yeah,
I,
we just
I don't get it.
hit a wall. But yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I am counting this as a solid W, not even a close one, but a solid one. But go
Well,
ahead.
you can count it however you'd like.
Thank you.
But
I
at the end of the
appreciate
day,
your I
it's
appreciate
who
your
gets
permission.
convinced. My follow up to it though is wondering about how you feel about like the charitability towards political pundits for the conservatives right now. I feel like that's kind of like the biggest divide here, where Destiny kind of feels like conservatives no longer like deserve any charity, where you're still on the boat of, hey, give them charity.
I think that depends on who we're talking about. If you've demonstrated that you are a entirely bad faith actor, like I'm trying to think of an example. Tim Pool. Let's use him as an example. I think that Tim Pool has demonstrated that you can't take this guy seriously, right? He is no longer a serious actor, nor should he be taken seriously. However, that does not extend to someone who happens to be a Tim Pool fan, right?
Yeah.
So simply because you happen to be a Tim Pool fan doesn't mean you revoke or rescind your rights to having good faith and charity extended to you. Does that make sense? The degrees of separation.
It does, and there's a certain point where like people get so into the Tim Pool sphere where they understand like the full arguments that go along with it, and they can argue themselves into a corner there. But I also know that these people are pretty fucking stupid at times, and like there's a level of charitability to give to them to try to convince them, but there's also a level of non-charitability to give to them because they're wrong. So it's like a balance there that I feel has gone way too far on the charitability side to conservatives at times, and it legitimizes a lot of their views. Like I feel personally
how
as like
that?
an out.
Can you give me an example of a time you think I've legitimized?
Not you specifically. I honestly think you do a great job at what you do, and I think the charitability you give is often like deserved. I feel like your conversations are
I will accept your flattery,
particularly
sir.
when you do find someone who's willing to engage with you on like good faith topics. I don't feel like you get as many of those as you probably would like. People are pretty down their own rabbit holes and not really open to their mind changing. But I feel like you, at least the ones that in your chat groups that you get that will engage, you do a really good job of talking to them. And
do you know why I'm able to get those?
Because you're willing to offer charity to a lot of different people in a lot of different situations, right?
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. People are mirrors, right? Yeah. People will mirror your energy naturally. Not everyone, obviously. I'm trying not to paint with too broad of a brush here. But people will generally mirror the energy that you give to them, the faith that you give to them. If you extend good faith to them, generally, they will extend good faith in return. Now, when we get into talking heads, when we get into pundits, then it becomes a little more dicey, right? Because they have incentives not to be honest, right? They have incentives to be rah, rah, rah cheerleaders for their side. But the rank and file, they'll generally be charitable to you if you're charitable to them.
In some cases, yes, but in a lot of cases, the ones that aren't there just will never come to that charitability, right? It's one of those things where they'll take it and run with it.
Can you give me an example of someone you think that should not be extended charity?
That's a good question. Like Tim Pool is the obvious example right now, or anyone.
What about smaller people in this space, right? Like, do you think that we should extend charity to Lactoid?
Yeah, Lactoid seems like a decent conversation partner. I think he might be a little far gone on a few points, but
sure. What about well, that's important, right? Like I want to touch on that just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because good faith and bad faith, a good faith person can still just disagree with you on all your points, right? They can take in the same amount of facts, the same context, and come to a different conclusion. They might be wrong, but that doesn't make them necessarily bad faith. And I think too often we make the mistake, just real quick, we make the mistake of you disagree with me, therefore you're bad faith. Because how could you come to any other conclusion but the one that I have come to? And I think that's faulty. I think that's wrong.
100% wrong. And it's like a lot of what I'm talking about here too, right? Where I feel that right now there is a lot of people who don't ground their stuff in facts, or they ground their stuff in things that other people have gone and looked up for them and regurgitated to them with their narrative attached to it, right? And I don't think these people are so far gone that they can't be reached. I think charitability should be approached in those ways, but when you get to a point where you have the backing and grounding to understand the truth of a situation in a lot of ways, maybe like your view is biased, and you like obviously you're against the idea of certainty, right? Because that used to be your name.
That's a certainty, yes. It's a throwback.
So I feel like you might not give your certainty enough credit in some cases, where you're never like certain about a point because you're willing to listen to the other people, which I think is great in spaces like this.
I get the concern, right? That there are certain things that are just true, right?
Yeah.
And if your mind's so open that your brain falls out, it doesn't help anyone, right? Like there are certain things that you just have to. You can't abandon belief just because there's a 1% chance you might be wrong. But I think that at the end of the day, I think it's important to notice that even your most deeply held beliefs might be wrong. And you need to keep that in the back of your head. That doesn't mean you abandon them, right? Because that would be silly, right? But like you have to be open to the possibility that yeah, maybe your worldview is flawed.
Yeah. And I'm asking you to be open to the worldview that conservatives don't deserve the charity you give them at times.
Sure,
But
can you give me an
I'm
example of
not really
someone in
trying
this
to convince you
space?
there.
No, I
that
get
was
you,
just a joke.
but I'm just for a baseline here. I'm trying to
Yeah.
give me an example of someone in this space that you think doesn't deserve charity.
Let me take a look. Because obviously I watch Destiny and therefore I'm pretty pilled against the people he just talked to.
Sure.
Thinking about the people I've seen you talk to recently,
Mhm.
most of them
It can
have
be
been
people that
good. I
Destiny's
think
talked to because
um,
I see Destiny like I'm in that same sphere, right?
yeah. So just from the most recent conversation with Lonerbox, Dylan, and the two conservatives that don't know, I feel like Non-Smoker did a decent job in that conversation, but I feel like the other conservative there just wasn't really open to
Sure.
having the discussion
So
that we were
Fabian
looking
Liberty
to have.
Scott
Yeah.
does not deserve charity anymore, according to you.
That would be my take on it. Yes.
Gotcha.
Though, like to receive charity back, all it takes is being open to
Fair enough.
a conversation where you address
Okay.
what's happened. Yeah.
Well, thank you for calling in, brother. I'll
Right.
talk to you
You
later.
have a
okay?
great day.
You too. I guess it's a call. I guess it's a call-in show now, gang. So if you want to call in, if you have thoughts, if you think that I did poorly or Destiny did poorly, or you think that there's another topic that we should have talked about instead, if you think that I'm being too charitable to the Republicans, if you think I'm a Republican shill, by all means, call in. We can do this all day. Well, not all day. I'll eventually eat and have to go and do other things, right? But like, there's this. One of the things that is frustrating to me, one of the things that I find it concerns me is the idea, right, that is espoused by Josiah. Destiny's espoused this before, and there's other people in the space espoused this before, is that the other side has crossed the line and we can no longer treat them as fellow travelers and we have to treat them as an enemy. The frustrating part of that worldview is that in some cases it's correct. But because there are certain cases in which that's true, does not mean that that is generally the case, or that extends beyond those few circumstances. For the most part, we should not be treating Republicans as enemy combatants, and vice versa. Republicans should not be treating Democrats as the enemy. But far, far, far too much, we are. We are treating each other as enemies, no longer fellow citizens, but as enemies. And again, the frustrating part of it is that in certain cases they are, right? In certain cases they are. But we overplay our hand when we extend that to the general public at large. We overplay our hand. And we get, and especially in spaces like this, okay? So you were exposed in the debate space, in this kind of sphere, into the political advocacy sphere. You were exposed to the loudest voices, the most extreme voices on all sides. And you can come to believe that that is representative of the other side in total, right? You can absolutely come to believe that. I think that it is, unfortunately, a faulty belief. It is a faulty thing to believe. I think that you trick yourselves when you have that. But you have every reason to believe that way because everyone around you, it seems, is acting that way because you are amongst the loudest, most extreme voices. This is why it's important to touch grass, ladies and gentlemen. That's why it's important to go and touch grass. Because you have to recognize that the people calling for civil war or saying civil war's coming are the extreme minority. Most people don't believe this. Most people interact with their neighbors on a day-to-day basis, whether they be Trump supporters or Harris supporters. They get along fine. They may argue time to time, right? But in general, they exist together without tearing each other's eyeballs out. That is becoming less rare or less common, but it is still extremely rare when people fight, right? Or have physical altercations. My goal, my task, what I'm trying to do, one of the goals of tasks I have is trying to overcome people's notion that the other side is just the enemy. And there's nothing to be done but take the gloves off and go dirty. This is where me and Josiah have one of the biggest disagreements, one of the biggest complaints. Cognitive dissonance says, if the field has no grass yet, keep your damn hands off it. That's a different thing. Old Scotty says, the frustrating part is that we have to waste time debunking crap like cat-eating Haitians and numerous other nonsensical crap before we even begin to have real conversations. Yes, that is frustrating. The idea that a presidential candidate screamed last night, they're eating our dogs, because he saw some memes online is wild, right? It's wild. It's crazy. But here we are. Anyone have anything else for me today? $10 from Per Thompson. Sadly, Whick, I don't agree with that anymore. These people have ensnared 35 to 40% of the country into believing that refugees are eating cats and that civil war is coming. Do you want to come on and talk about it a little bit? Do you want to come on and discuss that with me? Because well, we obviously disagree. We obviously don't agree on this. So, I'm more than willing to hear you out, though. Frozen Knight says, did you hear how his voice broke when he said, I have part of a plan? Or however, he said, I have a concept of a plan. Yeah, get into Discord, accept the rules, jump backstage, I'll pull you in. All good. Don't show porn or nothing. We had an incident recently, unfortunately. Some guy came in and he started, he was talking normal for a while, but then he got mad and he started showing porn. I had to delete that VOD. I was very upset. Hello, you're live. Hello, you're live. You're muted on your end, sir. Or ma'am.
Can you hear me now?
Ah, yes. There we go. We solved it, gang.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that in general,
Are you Per Thompson, by the way, from the?
I am Per Thompson.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure I'm talking to the right person. Go ahead.
You are. Yeah, I think that in general, we're at the point now where a large portion of our population believes these stories, even if they get shut down in a couple days, they still believe it. And this is why we end up with, a lot of people believing civil war is coming, things like that.
I agree with you that more people more people have what I would consider unreasonable belief systems, and that they are louder about it. But I disagree that should change how we treat them. Does that make sense? Because it isn't enough for me to have a weird belief system, right? That's not enough for me to change how I treat them. Extreme cases notwithstanding, like I'm sure you could point out like some kind of extreme where someone believes, actually, I think the age of consent shouldn't exist. Yes, I'll treat that person different, right? But I'm talking about politically on normal things. Does that make sense?
I mean, I guess the question that we're sort of wrangling with is whether or not how large of a percentage of the population has these insane beliefs.
So this idea,
And I think it's more than it should be, and I
Okay.
think it's getting to the point where it's dangerous for us to take the high road all the time.
Okay. So let me give you a little bit of a Whick history lesson, okay? I remember I grew up in a very religious household. I grew up in a military household. I've always been around a lot of right-wingers in my life, okay? This idea that the election is stolen is not a new idea. This is not new. What's new is the president acted on it, right? And Republican leaders are also saying it. But the rank and file have believed for decades that one of the only reasons the Democrats win because they cheat, right? They believe that dead people vote. They believe that the cities like pump the numbers. This is a common belief, and has been a common belief amongst a lot of Republicans for longer than you or I have been alive, right? So again, this shouldn't change how we treat them just because they have this belief. What becomes a problem, and when we should change our behavior towards someone, is when they act on that belief in certain ways. Does that make sense?
No, I agree with that. I think one of the problems is that this type of behavior, these beliefs are being, exploded on social media. I mean, you find someone else who thinks that, dead people are voting, and then you find 10 more people, and then you find 1,000 more people, and all of a sudden it's 10 million people. And then it becomes a lot easier for someone who doesn't really know or has a friend or, this kind of thing is dangerous. And that's kind of where I'm thinking, like, we're at the point now where some of these conspiracy theories are just, they're just going crazy.
No, I mean, I agree with it. I agree that social media has an amplification problem. I guess I just well, let me ask you, what do you think the solution is here?
Yeah, I don't know, but
Okay.
I think what we've done so far, and I mean, for a long time I was with you. I would believe that taking the high road and trying to be reasonable and explaining and trying to understand and all of that kind of stuff was the right way to go. But it's just getting worse and worse, and I feel a little bit like fighting fire with fire.
I agree with that, but I would posit that the reason it's getting worse and worse is because we aren't doing what I'm suggesting. I don't think we've ever lived in a world where any side has taken the high road. Neither Democrats nor Republicans. From as far back as I can remember, Democrats and Republicans both have always tried to undercut each other, to try to use political maneuverings, dirty deals, corrupt ways and methods in order to undermine the other side so that they can win, right?
Okay.
There has not
I guess
been...
I guess you're saying that the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans.
No, not just as bad. No, Republicans are worse at this. That's why I'm a Democrat. I think the Democrats are better at this. But that does not mean we are perfect nor angels in this. We do it in different ways. But let's look at the conspiracy theories. A third of the Democrats don't believe that Trump they believe that the Trump assassination attempt was staged. A third of the Democrats. That's a problem.
Agreed.
Yeah. So again, these conspiracy theories, these faulty belief systems, these faulty ways of thinking are not just. No side has a monopoly on it.
Right. I mean,
Yes.
I think we just end up coming down to a matter of degrees. I feel like, the Republican side has gotten exceedingly bad over the last 10 years, 8 years. And, we're just in a...
but we don't need
we've
to
been in a
be
holding
as
pattern.
bad as them. We don't. We can win this. In fact, I think that the danger of becoming as bad as them is that it makes it harder for people to distinguish actual differences. between.
But I feel like you're putting words in my mouth. I'm not saying we should be quote unquote as bad as them.
Then please.
I think we
correct
should
me.
just, not take as much shit from them as
Yeah,
we
but
have.
how
been.
does that manifest?
Yeah, I mean, fighting fire with fire,
Well,
having
give me an example of what you would like to do, or have done by the Democrats that they aren't currently doing.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, the Supreme Court Justice, the what's his face, the guy that's AG now, didn't get voted on from Obama.
Oh yeah, Merrick Garland.
Yeah, Merrick Garland. We should probably look at something similar. If that's the way things are, that's the way things are.
I mean, that isn't the first time that happened. We understand that, correct? Like that has happened before. The fact that we have a rule.
Yeah, it happened in the 1840s?
In the 1970s as well, right? Like when Nixon tried to appoint some things, he had to try a couple times because they kept not holding a vote, not holding a hearing on his appointment.
Who was this for?
Man, let me get the information for you, sir. Blackman was nominated as an Associate Justice of the United Supreme Court on April 15, 1970, and the United States Senate confirmed him on May 12 by 94 vote. But it was his third attempt to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of Ava Forta in May 14, 1969. His earlier failed nominees were Clement Hainsworth and G. Harold Carswell. And so, again, these are things that it's not unique, right? Now, again, the reason we have a cloture vote, a vote on cloture that's required is because Democrats and Republicans both were playing fucking fucky-wucky games with each other, right? And so we changed the Senate procedural rules to require certain things to try to fix the problem. And that's why they wouldn't even have a hearing on it, because if they did have a hearing on it, the rules would require them to actually vote. So that's why they played the game.
I'm not familiar with that. I'll look into it.
Yeah, but again, like my point here is we don't live in the world.
If there's precedent, then we should just do it more, right? I mean,
no, because the fact that this is becoming normalized is part of the problem. It's part of the problem that it's eroded the ability of the sides to work together. Because again, like what used to happen not that long ago during Harry Reid's tenure was Harry Reid normalized this kind of behavior where they would work together behind the scenes, but in public they would fight, right? They would fight. That means that they weren't required to make votes that would put them in jeopardy of their seat, right? So if an abortion thing came across, they wouldn't be required to cast a vote on that because it had already been messed with behind the scenes, out of the public eye, out of public scrutiny, which would allow it to pass even without the votes of everyone in every party, right? That's why Senator Harry Reid, who was a Democrat, was a Democratic party leader, but also a Mormon, was able to sit out of votes regarding abortion, right? And it allowed him to keep his conscience, right? Because he had religious beliefs on it, right? So again, the problem is that with McConnell and this new round of Senate leadership with Schumer and things like that, they forgot the part where they were supposed to work together behind the scenes. They forgot that part. And so now we're in this situation where everyone's just trying to get one up on each other, right?
Yeah, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, but one of the and this is why I think that further eroding the tools that they would have, such as getting rid of the filibuster or
these are all bad things. I agree.
Yeah.
This should not happen.
Sure.
But it's you really are fighting with one hand behind your back if you continue to try to follow rules when the other side does not. This is why we have a 6-3 court now, right? I mean,
well, it could also be argued that the reason we have a 6-3 court now is because Harry Reid tried to tit for tat with Mitch McConnell, and he removed the ability to filibuster court nominees or presidential nominees for lower courts. And so in a tit for tat, because McConnell was trying to block his nominees, Harry Reid said, "No, okay, fuck you. I'm going to change the rules." And so McConnell's like, "You'll regret it." And he did, because McConnell then took that precedent and changed the rules himself. And that is why we had no recourse to stop them ramming through their appointments.
Okay, this is a little bit silly, right? Because you could go back again and then say, well, how come Harry Reid couldn't get any
They were trying to block it.
regular
right? But he had other options.
They were blocking him. Oh,
he had
what was
other options than what he did. And those other options, my argument here is that those other options that he had would not have put us into the situation that we are. But because he chose the nuclear option, and it was called that for a reason, that's the term that they were referring to it. It was a nuclear option.
I
because
remember.
it was a mutually assured destruction type of deal. There were other options on the table. He chose not to go with them. One of the other options on the table, for example, was him to simply pick more acceptable nominees for the Republicans. Now, you could argue that,
and I will
no
argue
nominee
that they would have taken zero,
but
regardless.
We didn't even fucking try.
Okay,
So
I don't know. I didn't look at.
argue
There were
with that.
hundreds. There were hundreds of judges, right, that were on the docket for approval. I don't know that.
I think
None of them were
they
more
blocked
acceptable.
20, if I'm remembering.
I'll have to look,
right.
but
Yeah,
I mean,
have to
there
look.
were like
I could be wrong on that.
there
Don't
was a
hold me to it.
huge huge disparity, or like a huge lack of judges being approved.
Yeah, 20 is a lot. I'm not saying that it
on the
wasn't a
federal
problem.
bench. I think it's well, I don't know. I feel like it should be more, but I don't know.
Like I said, I could have the number wrong. Don't hold me to it.
There are 13 circuits with like 10, 12 judges on each, right?
Yeah, which means 20 is a sizable percentage.
It's a percentage anyway. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are. I have to look it up.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
fair
yeah. I mean,
enough.
you
Like, even if we
didn't
give
have
you
it. You
that,
didn't have a
though-
nuclear option. You basically say, well, they should just have, basically,
I think they should
put out more acceptable
Yes,
judges, but
yes.
that would not have worked. I think a lot of the judges that they did put out were pretty acceptable.
Look,
Garland was a very acceptable option.
well, I don't think Harry Reid was putting up Garland as an option.
No, I'm not saying, but like to push it forward to what McConnell did.
No, I
Garland
mean, I
was
agree
not.
with you.
Garland was not
I agree with you
a
that they should have
radical
held-
judge in any way.
Yeah, I agree with you that they should have nominated Garland. I don't disagree there. I agree that they did some fucky-wucky shit. McConnell is to blame for this. But we are not free of blood on our hands here, is what I'm saying. And I think that overall, my point here is that we need to stop treating the rank and file Republicans as enemies. I don't think they are. Not the rank and files. You can argue that the pundits
I
and politicians
100%
talking
agree with
heads,
that.
right? Fair enough.
100% agree that most Republicans are not.
But we
but
are.
the people,
You realize we are. treating them as
unfortunately,
enemies.
the people who are getting elected now are crazy. Like, I mean, just look, MTG, Lauren Boebert, those guys. Those people are nuts. How can you possibly work with them, Whick? How? They're
You
insane.
Work around them in a lot of cases, but
Okay, but in 5
let's
years,
look
if
at-
things go the same way, that half of the House is going to be these kind of nut jobs.
But even in some of the very extreme circumstances, right? They've demonstrated that there are lines that they won't cross. So McConnell, I'll give you an example. Lindsey Graham, I'll give you another example. They pushed back against Trump when it came to the Stop the Steal stuff, and also when it came to the January 6th stuff. Like they may have changed their tune since, but at the time they stood up against Trump, right? And
Notice how I didn't say that McConnell was a crazy person, right? I mean,
Sure. But a lot of Democrats would. A lot of Democrats would think that McConnell and Lindsey Graham and all these people, even Liz Cheney, were exemplars of evil.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I
Yes,
obviously
me too,
disagree with that.
Right, and this is why.
I mean, I don't like McConnell at all. He's a snaky guy, but he's a good politician. There's no question about that.
Cacophony
And if-
says, "What about the squad? They are nuts too."
Yes.
Some of them.
I agree.
AOC is growing on me. I'll be real. I didn't like AOC before, but in the recent year, she's growing on me. I think that she's demonstrated some political acumen that I find refreshing, a willingness to work across the aisle that I find refreshing, a pragmatism that I find refreshing. Now, the other members, less impressed, and I would agree. But
I would agree with
AOC
that. I would 100% agree with
specifically,
that.
AOC specifically is growing on me. I'll be real. She's growing on me.
Yep, I agree. She's gotten much, much better in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Okay, well,
But the others got voted out. So anyway, I don't want to take up all your time. So
thanks for calling in, though. I appreciate the discussion.
yep, thanks.
See you.
Love you. Bye.
So much love. So much love in the room, gang. So much love. Talib is fucking nuts, so he can't just say it's only Republicans. I don't think he was, and I'm certainly not saying that it's one party has a monopoly on the crazy. I don't think that's true. Now, I am a Democrat, so I obviously think that the Democrats are better, but me saying that does not say that they are perfect. Yeah. Is there anything else anyone new wants to call in? I see Audacity, I see Dilemma backstage, but you guys, we already had our conversation. We already had our talk. Toby1 Kenobi says the AOC was snappy right out of the gate. Loved her from day one. Look, maybe I misjudged her. It's very possible I just misjudged her. But like I said, in the past year, she has demonstrated, while I still don't agree with her on several issues, she's demonstrated a pragmatism that I find refreshing. A willingness to play ball that I think is necessary and shows a mature attitude towards politics that I like. So I am much more of a fan of AOC today than I was last year. She's not 40 yet, is she? I don't know how old she is. Jeff Pham says, I agree with the AOC take. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, brothers. Agreeing with takes that Whick makes. Do you guys like these shorter discussions? I know the Destiny discussion was pretty short. Do you guys mind that? Like, what, or do you like the more long form stuff that I do with the panels? What, dear viewers, do you want to see more of? What do you want to see more of regarding content? I'm still going to do shows I want to do just because I want to do them, to be clear. Like, I'll still do D&D streams, even though none of you watch my Dungeons & Dragons streams. None of you. It hurts my feelings. But I'll still do them, even if they don't get super numbers. But what do you want to see is my question. Audacity says short form can be constructive. Cacophony says, I just know you won't see Democrats overthrow the Speaker of the House if they do something they disagree with. Republicans at least throw down. Look, Democrats, like, talking about dirty pool, Democrats helped overthrow the Republican Speaker of the House. That was a quote-unquote dirty pool, but I have no problem with that. I think that was fine. I think it was fine for them to do that. I think it was politics. And yeah, politics is okay on occasion. I don't think there was any lasting negative impact of them doing a little fucky-wucky with the Republicans when it comes to the Speaker of the House. But that's my opinion. Audacity says multiple topics, some longer ones run on too long to the point of frustration because clearly a wall was reached that can no longer be traversed. True. A lot of this is knowing, and when I say this, I mean posting content. A lot of it is knowing when to stop. Too many creators, and this is a habit that so many creators have that I find, it's why I don't watch a lot of creators, right? There's several reasons why I don't really watch other streamers. But this is one of them, is that they all go for like 10 hours. And it's just nothing. It's nothing. It's not even interesting. They just do 10 hours of content because they feel like they need to fill the time. Silly. The other reason, okay, perhaps the more pertinent reason that I don't watch other streamers that much, I'll tune in time to time, okay? But I'm a participator. I'm not an observer so much. I don't just like to watch. I'm not a debate cuck. Okay? I'm not a cuck when it comes to debate. I don't want to watch other people's debates while I sit in the corner, like jacking it, right? No offense to the people who love that, right? That's how I make my money, right? You guys watch me, right? But no, I want to get in on the action too, okay? I want to get on the action too. I want to actually have my voice heard. I want to get in. I want to play some ball, right? I don't watch sports for that same reason, even though I enjoy playing several sports. I don't want to watch. I want to do. I want to participate. Okay? I want to get in on the action. Perini says, calling all of the audience cucks based. Look, I'm not judging. You guys have your thing, okay? It's just not my thing. But I'm glad that you like to watch when I go down, okay? I'm glad that you like to watch when I host a debate. I'm glad that you like to watch when I participate. You're my little bros, okay? You're my little bros. I appreciate you. I like you. Cacophony says it's called the Peanut Gallery and it's a tradition since the time of Shakespeare. Uncultured ass. Team Frostback says, Toby-Wan Kenobi, do you get... Oh, that's you're talking to the chat. Fair enough. No, it's because platforms reward longer streams and more uploads. You will drop from view on the platform if you're not regular long hours. Maybe that's why I'm stuck where I'm at, right? That's very possible. That I just don't do enough streams to catch the algo. It's possible. Took says, thanks for the chat, Wick. Hope everyone has a good night. Well, I'll see you later, buddy. Yeah, we'll be ending soon. There is one thing that I'd like to bring up about last night's debate, because once in a while Lex Friedman does watch my show, and I asked this last night. He didn't happen to be watching my show that day. If he's watching it today, though, and I hope that he is, I am curious what your thoughts are on when, according to Trump claimed that when he was on your show and he admitted that he lost by a whisker, that he was being sarcastic. That was his claim. I watched your interview with Donald Trump. I saw that part, right? That didn't look like sarcasm to me. But giving the most grace possible, it's very possible that there was some signals that I didn't catch that you would have to be in the room to catch. Possible. Lex Friedman was in that room. So my question to Lex Friedman is, did you think it was sarcasm? Did it come across as sarcasm to you when he made that statement? Because you were in the room. You were talking to the gentleman. You have a better point of observation to make that call than I did. Okay? So I want to know what you thought. That's all. Audacity seed, that is an admission of anything. No, when he was talking about having lost by a whisker, I took him to mean he was conceding the election, that he meant what he said, that he lost by a whisker. I don't know what to tell you. Cacophony says, what do you think about Kamala's illegal immigrant transition belief? The CNN fact-checked as true. Are you talking about the transing of the illegal immigrants in prison? I don't know enough about it. Sounded fake to me, but it turns out it might not be. But it sounded fake at the time. I'd have to look more into it. But there has been people that I trust have told me, no, this might be actually a thing. So I don't know enough yet to make a call. Okay. So I'm going to end the stream. I'm going to go eat. I appreciate all of you putting up with me. And thank you for being here to observe my mighty, strong, manly W against the debate master himself, Destiny. Okay. I tried not to embarrass him too much. I hope I didn't. I hope he thinks I'm a good guy, okay? But I hope you guys enjoyed it. So, tomorrow I'm taking off. I'm going to rest. But Friday, I am going to be guest hosting the Hippy Dippy, okay? I'm going to be moderating Connor and Dylan versus, and let me see if I can get these names up here real quick. John Jackman and Larry Sharp. So the topic will be NATO. So Friday, 6:30 p.m. Tune in. I will be following their rules for moderation, not necessarily my own, so it might be a little different. But I am, as a guest, going to follow the rules of the hosts. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you have fun. And I'll see you Friday, 6:30. If you've enjoyed this content, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button, right? If you're watching this on Kick, hit that follow. But for now, I'm going to bid thee all